Chapter 137, New Record at the moment. A coiling dragon was fighting with a white tiger in the arena, and in a flash, a powerful attack of coiling dragon annihilated the white tiger. Unlike the coiling dragon, white tiger didn't possess its own consciousness. However, even if it did possess consciousness, what could it possibly do to defend itself from the vicious and formidable claws of coiling dragon or occasional fierce tail swings? The might of the coiling dragon was enormous, and white tiger simply wasn't its match. Above the high stand, many of the elders were paying attention to Yi Zaiwen's palm technique with curious looks in their eyes. It was obvious that this palm method was an extremely high-grade power technique, though they could not determine its rank, but they were still able to figure out its fundamentals and concluded that it was very formidable power technique. This battle's outcome is already decided. It has been such a pity. Originally, it was quite possible for him to break into the top 20 rankings. Unfortunately, ran into this Yi Shiwen. An elder sighed and said, "Luck is a part of the strength, because bad luck partially reflects the manifestation of lacking strength and incompetence." A nearby elder curled his lips and said, "These elders and true disciples were looking at the contenders with unusual toxic looks in their eyes. They were the masters of Truth Realm and could easily predict the outcome of the battle between two mere inner disciples without even needing to see the battle all the way to the very end." Above the high stand, a pair of vicious eyes was looking at Yi Shiwen. It was none other than Luo Yifan, and right now, several thoughts were constantly raging up inside his heart. In his heart, the idea to kill Yi Shiwen didn't diminish the slightest, but he never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually be able to attend the Seed Disciple competition. The reason why he did not kill Yi Shiwen before because of the presence of a large crowd at the scene, and one more reason was that he was extremely confident on his own skill. He was sure that once Yi Shiwen received his sonic wave attack, he would most probably die later, and even if he didn't die, at least he would have to face great consequences from the aftereffects, and after that, he won't have any advancement in strength. But he never expected that Yi Shiwen actually did not die, and there didn't seem any signs of aftereffects either, which suddenly made him feel deceived. This meant that Yi Shiwen wasn't under the impact of his technique and was lying to him. Thinking of this, the anger in his heart was even more difficult to contain, and a killing intention immediately appeared in his eyes, almost anxious to kill Yi Shiwen right there. In his heart, he realized that Yi Shiwen was certainly related to Luo Tian's death, and the killing intention became even more intense. He pledged to kill Yi Shiwen at any cost. Yi Shiwen naturally did not know about the commotion going on inside Luo Yifan's heart. It would be a lie to say that Yi Zaiwen's spirit won't be deterred once he knew about Luo Yifan's intentions, but he also knew that Luo Yifan was not someone who would give up so easily. The sense of crisis was present in his heart, but right now, there was no time to think about all that. For now, he needed to concentrate on his current opponent. Zhang Qi must finish this fight. The situation suddenly changed. At that moment, Yi Shiwen churned out a wave of vigorous Zhen Qi, raised his long blade and chopped out a long thick blade light, which instantly rushed towards Zhang Qi. Zhang Kai's white tigers were successively chopped down and instantly vanished by Yi Zaiwen's blade light. Zhang Qi's face revealed a desperate expression because he did not expect that Yi Zaiwen's real strength would turn out to be so formidable. Shua! Blade light flew across the arena, and since the distance wasn't too long, it instantly arrived in front of Zhang Qi and was about to chop into his body, when abruptly, that blade light seemed to have been manipulated and vanished without a trace. At this moment, Zhang Kai's whole body was covered with cold sweat, but he suddenly discovered that the blade light didn't even touch his body, and right then, Yi Zaiwen's loud voice came from across the arena. "Senior Zhang, you let me win." When Zhang Qi heard this, his face immediately turned red. He was embarrassed. He was simply owned by a junior and made a fool of himself in front of everyone. However, Yi Shiwen was merciful and didn't injure him even the slightest, so he quickly cupped one hand into other across the chest and said, "Thank you, Brother Yi, for showing mercy. This fellow brother is deeply grateful." Not to mention the top 20 ranks, it was fortunate that Yi Shiwen was merciful, otherwise if he had received that blade light attack then he would have faced severe injuries. Today, he could only say that his own luck was bad that he had to face an insanely strong master like Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen jumped down the arena and Yi Mo's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Why did you stop? Why didn't you kill him? Anyway, no one would get prosecuted for killing an opponent in the arena. I'm not a devil and I don't kill people for fun, Yi Shiwen lightly said. Yi Shiwen very much appreciated the attitude of Zhang Qi and he was only brutal to his enemies. Human nature is really hard to understand. Yi Mo said, that's why your devil race will never understand human race, Yi Shiwen said while walking. There was always this kind of difference in opinions between him and Yi Mo. He clearly knew that sometimes Yi Mo showed a somewhat childish behavior, but its views on some issues were terrifying, and in its eyes, let alone human beings, even those devils were nothing more than lowly ants. For Yi Mo, the war between human race and devil race was just like watching two ant nests fighting for food. Although Yi Mo was not so indifferent to Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen also knew that it was just because they were related to each other as Tianyuan Mirror's owner and tool spirit. Perhaps it had seen so much slaughter over a course of a long time that cruelty had properly immersed deep into its bones, but of course, recently, Yi Shiwen had come to believe that Yi Mo's previous owner was probably a very extraordinary figure, and was really the ruler of 10,000 worlds, and he must have also looked down on people. Just like Yi Mo, Yi Shiwen didn't know how to remove this kind of deep-rooted indifference in its bones, but as long as he didn't have the same viewpoint he didn't care about Yi Mo's indifference. After winning the third round, Yi Shiwen successfully stepped into the top 100 and justifiably became a seed disciple. This immediately aroused the crowd and also the disciples of Qianyu faction. Earlier Yi Shiwen was only famous as a disciple whose strength is comparable to the strength of seed disciples, but now that he stepped into the top 100 rankings of seed disciples, he officially established his strength in front of the whole crowd, and now he was no longer just comparable to seed disciples, but actually became a seed disciple. This year, Yi Shiwen joined the main sect, and in the first year only, he was able to reach all the way into the top 100 ranks of the seed disciple competition. By becoming a seed disciple, now he was above hundreds of thousands of inner and outer disciples of the main sect. The senior disciples couldn't even remember when was the previous time something like this happened in the main sect. Some of the senior disciples remembered that a few decades ago, a new disciple was able to achieve such a feat in the main sect, and that person was none other than Qi Fifan. However, now, in the Yiyuan school, Qi Fifan was at the height of power, and being able to enter into the top 100 seed disciple rankings was one of the many records he made in the main sect, and this record was not too splendid as well. Moreover, that was a long time, decades ago, so long that not more than half of the inner or outer disciples from that time still remembered this record in the corners of their minds, and half of them simply did not remember at all. After all, it had been decades since they joined the main sect. A period of decades was not a short time for warriors of Xiantian realm, and as far as Hotian realm warriors were concerned, it was a very long time. At least now in the eyes of all the disciples, Yi Shiwen created a record, a brand new record, and this record would be accompanied and remembered by many disciples of his batch. Just like for decades, many disciples from Qi Fifan's batch still remembered his records. Although Qi Fifan, who was generally considered as a myth by many, had stepped into the top 50 seed disciple rankings, and if Yi Shiwen was able to break this record, then he would make a brand new record in the history of Yiyuan school. There was anticipation present in the eyes of the crowd because Yi Shiwen had directly overshadowed those senior disciples, and Yi Shiwen did not break anyone's anticipation and easily defeated a formidable seed disciple in the fourth round and smoothly stepped into the top 50 seed disciple rankings. With this achievement, he tied with the Qi Fifan's record. Suddenly all of the disciples were boiling with happiness and excitement. Yi Ziwen's performance was too bright, he was simply winning all the fights with ease and in a highly competent way, as if he wasn't even using his full strength at all, and now that he tied the record of Qi Fifan, it simply pumped everyone with curiosity and anticipation. Would he actually break the record of Qi Fifan? Would he also turn into a myth, a legend? Now everyone started to speculate about Yi Ziwen's rank in the seed disciple competition and how far he would go. Some said he would step into the top 20, top 10, or even the first. Some relatively bold disciple guessed that Yi Shiwen would obtain the first rank and become the champion. Among those disciples who were happy for Yi Shiwen, it was obvious that most of them belonged to Qian Yu faction. Yi Shiwen was representing them and their faction, and he was also their honor. The more outstanding his performance was, the more face Qian Yu faction would get in front of everyone. The disciples of Qian Yu faction were only the newcomers, and besides the new disciples, almost none of the senior disciples had expressed interest in joining their faction, but now, the situation was not the same. In addition to the new disciples, there were many senior disciples who suddenly showed great interest in joining the Qian Yu faction. There were a lot of people who saw the outstanding performance of Yi Shiwen, and only after that, they showed their interest. Yi Ziwen's performance was simply unbelievably outstanding, and just like Qi Fifan, there was a great possibility that he would also turn into an outstanding true disciple. If they joined the Qian Yu faction now, then in the future, they would automatically become a part of the faction of a true disciple once Yi Shiwen becomes a true disciple. In a place like Yiyuan School, when disciples joined factions, they not only receive protection, more importantly, they could obtain enormous benefits, especially when they belonged to a true disciples faction. After becoming a true disciple, compounded drugs, spirit stones, and so on didn't remain too important for them, but for Xiantian realm disciples, these were considered great assets. This was also the reason why many senior disciples wanted to join the faction created by a true disciple, but for joining the factions led by true disciples, there were strict admission rules and only elite core disciples could obtain a membership in these factions. Inner and outer disciples simply had no chance. Not to forget, only few could manage to become core disciples. So even if they were very much envious, but there was no other way. However now, the appearance of Qian Yu faction gave them an additional choice. So long as Yi Ziwen's outstanding growth continued and his progress didn't depreciate in the future, then there was a huge probability that he would become a true disciple. This was a gamble and could return huge profits in the future. Chapter 138, Once Again Defeats Mo Han. This was a gamble on the assumption that Yi Shiwen would continue to progress in the future and would finally reach the truth realm, then they would be able to reap great benefits. So there were many senior disciples who acted out of their own accord and suddenly showed interest in joining the Qian Yu faction, and there were many more who were waiting and watching from the sidelines. Regarding this, Yi Feng, Yan Qiliang and other high-level members of Qian Yu faction naturally knew that it was naturally due to the successive victories of Yi Shiwen and his incredible strength, openly displayed in front of everyone. The sudden popularity of Qian Yu faction was all because of Yi Ziwen's popularity, which was acting as a magnetic force to attract new members, and due to that, the total number of members in the faction suddenly increased a lot. Originally, the senior disciples had not shown interest in joining the Qian Yu faction, but now, they had come to join in abundance, and among them, there were many masters of Xiantian 5th stage. They were counted among the elite inner disciples and originally didn't spare a glance to the Qian Yu faction, but now, they had also started to show interest. And this was all due to Yi Ziwen's enormous influence, because in this world, everyone worshipped the strong and only strong people commanded respect. Formidable individuals could bring great influence, more than anyone could imagine. In the eyes of the crowd, there was anticipation as they were curiously waiting to know who Yi Ziwen's opponent would be in the 5th round, and after a while, his next opponent turned out to be Mo Han. With a long spear standing erect next to him, there was a cold and gloomy look in Mo Han's eyes, while his imposing aura was much more formidable than it was last time. During the time of Yi Ziwen's first battle in the Seed Disciple competition, almost no one was optimistic about his victory, and thought that he was being overconfident, but right now, no one thought that Yi Shiwen was being overconfident. In fact, this time, they were quite themselves that he would certainly win. Although a lot of people's views were lopsided, thinking that Yi Shiwen would win, after all, even if the strength of Mo Han was quite high, but he was only at the peak of Xiantian 5th stage, although he had comprehended Man-Spear Unification Realm, but Yi Shiwen defeated him once before, and right now, Yi Shiwen now should obviously be more powerful than before, so the outcome seemed to be obvious to everyone. I did not expect to meet you in the 5th round. Yi Shiwen said. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Mo Han said in a cold but determined voice, and at this time, his eyes were focused on Yi Shiwen, without caring about the cheering for Yi Shiwen still going on in the surroundings. These cheers were not causing any effect on him, because there was only thing that was continuously revolving in his mind: defeat him, defeat him. This was the only thought remaining in his heart: defeat Yi Shiwen. You have become more powerful than before, but I still want to defeat you, Mo Han said, and in his voice, there was not a single trace of weakness, although he could see that Yi Shiwen had become more formidable, but he himself was not the same as before, and compared to 3 months ago, he had also become more powerful, so much powerful that he was able to rush all the way to the 5th round. Let's begin, Yi Shiwen directly said. Mo Han shouted loudly. Zhen Qi instantly burst up under his feet, and his physique shot forward like an arrow and rushed towards Yi Shiwen, while the spear in his hands suddenly shot. Compared to the last time, he was a lot faster this time, and the ice-cold chill in the air made the surrounding temperature to reduce quickly, and to such an extent that it could easily freeze up people. When Yi Shiwen saw the spurky wrapped on the spear as it arrived in front of him, his eyes flashed with a color of surprise in them. Yi Shiwen did not expect that Mo Han would be able to so quickly wrap spurky on the spear. He truly lived up to his reputation as a genius, and his strength seemed a lot higher than before. One could say that if he had not met Yi Shiwen, then it was possible that he might have stepped into the top 20 rankings. Yi Shiwen grasped towards the void, and a long blade made up of Zhen Qi suddenly condensed in his hand and fiercely chopped out. Boom! A loud sound of spear intersecting the blade spread everywhere, causing an intense air friction, and instantly, a burst of thunderclap-like sound echoed in the arena. Why do you not use your blade? Do you look down on me? Mo Han asked in a cold voice. Mo Han was just like a mad martial artist who could allow himself to fail, could allow himself to die, but definitely could not allow anyone to look down on him. You are mistaken. I don't need a blade to use my blade skills, because my blade technique is actually a method that requires congealing Zhen Qi into a blade, so there's not much difference whether I use a blade or not, Yi Shiwen lightly said. Cold Moon Beheader itself required Bladiki as the main attacking method, and unless Yi Shiwen was facing an evenly matched opponent, using a blade didn't make much difference. If the strength of Yi Shiwen's opponent was less, then using a blade did not make a difference, but if his opponent was much stronger, then also using a blade couldn't change the outcome. If that's the case, then I was impolite. Mo Han did not think that there really were some masters who could simply use hands to display weapon-based power techniques. As his voice fell, he instantly shot his spear. The spear point glittered with a cold and threatening light, and just like a snake had come out of the hole, the spear shadow went toward Yi Shiwen and instantly arrived in front of him. Yi Shiwen also instantly released Zhen Qi from his body and congealed a long blade, then released several dancing blade shadows, which moved towards the spear shadow. Clang! The loud sound of metals clashing spread in the arena along with sparks from the collision between the two. Yi Shiwen's long blade covered with Zhen Qi and the spear of Mo Han heavily clashed and produced rippled of shock waves that spread out of the arena, and soon, the two figures severely collided into each other. Yi Shiwen stood motionless, but Mo Han hastily went back few steps and looked at Yi Shiwen with a startled look in his eyes. Mo Han did not hesitate and once again activated the Man-Spear unification, and although he just exchanged 2 moves with Yi Shiwen, he was compelled to use the strength of Man-Spear unification realm, and right now, during his second fight with Yi Shiwen, he discovered that in these 3 months, he himself had become much more tyrannical, but Yi Shiwen's tyranny was even more unreasonable. One could say that last time, they were almost evenly matched, but this time, he had no option but to use the strength of Man-Spear unification to resist against the formidable strength of Yi Shiwen. Mo Han heavily trod on the ground, and his physique started to merge with his spear and started taking form of a spear shadow, and above the spear point, Xiantian Zhen Qi rapidly condensed, and by means of his own aura, his body seemed to have stacked with the spear, and totally enveloped in Zhen Qi, his body almost fused together with the spear. He entered into the Man-Spear unification realm and pierced through the air, producing chi-chi sound. It seemed as if the air was being stabbed and cracking under the tremendous strength of Mo Han's spear attack. Facing the Man-Spear unification of Mo Han, a dignified expression appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. He now understood how Mo Han was able to rush all the way to this round, because by using the strength of man-spear unification, Mo Han's combat strength surpassed the strength of masters at the peak of Xiantian 5th stage, and was comparable to masters of Xiantian 6th stage. However, unlike last time, Yi Shiwen would not dodge this time. His stature blasted forward and went straight towards Mo Han's man-spear unification form. On the arena, a spear light was advancing towards a blade light, and only after an instant, under the gazes of numerous spectators, a storm swept out, and in a blink of an eye, the two opponents finally arrived in front of each other. Boom! Two figures severely clashed into each other, and a surge of terrifying blast from the tip of the two weapons fiercely spread and swept off like a tsunami, sending shock waves in all directions. In the wake of this terrifying blast, a figure was sent flying out of the arena upside down. The rioting air and shock waves calmed down after a moment, and the situation on the arena became apparent to everyone when they saw Yi Shiwen standing on the stage, crossing his hands behind the back. Now, the outcome of this battle was no longer hidden from the spectators. Suddenly, countless onlookers in the surroundings cheered, and at this time, there was no longer any distinction, whether it was new disciples or the senior disciples. All of them were cheering and shouting, and not just for a new disciple like Yi Shiwen, they were cheering for a formidable genius who just now created a brand new record, right in front of their eyes. Wasn't this situation simply against the heavens' will? Many of the senior disciples who originally disliked Yi Shiwen had to admit that Yi Shiwen was just too formidable. He defeated Mo Han, who was not just strong. After entering into the man-spear unification realm, his strength increased to the point of being comparable to the masters of Xiantian 6th stage. Now, it was obvious to everyone that if he had not faced Yi Shiwen in this round, then he might have entered into the top 10 seed disciple rankings with ease. However, unfortunately, he encountered Yi Shiwen, and it was just like fate. Whether it was Zhang Qi or Mo Han, both of them were strong and could have achieved higher ranks in this competition, but Yi Shiwen was just too strong, and to this point in the competition, no one was able to become a hurdle in his advancement. Yi Shiwen wins. Yi Shiwen smoothly crossed the 5th round and had already broken the old record of Qi Fifan and created a brand new record in the recent history of the Yuan school. At least one should be able to count him as the first person to create this record in the past 100 years of the Yuan school. While, at this time, everyone was boiling with excitement and ebullition, Yi Shiwen heard a cold voice directed at him. Yi Shiwen, your luck ends here. Enjoy your final moments while you can. Yi Shiwen looked and saw that it was that young marquis, and right now, was looking at Yi Shiwen with his eyes filled with hatred. There was a color of envy flashing in his eyes. Why, he himself managed to rush into the 6th round, then why was no one concerned about him? Why were everyone's eyes fixated on Yi Shiwen? Why couldn't he get the attention of everyone? Why him? Yi Shiwen looked coldly at the young marquis, because he just knew that his next opponent would be none other than this arrogant and despotic young marquis. He did not know whether it was a coincidence or someone's trick, but in a short time at this place, he once again bumped into the young marquis. After resting for a moment, Yi Shiwen heard his name being called for the next round. The next battle, Yi Shiwen, Zhu Bing Sun. Zhu Bing Sun was the name of the young marquis. Come on, Yi Shiwen, defeat that Zhu Bing Sun. Come on, make history, create a legend. Almost all of the disciples were cheering in support of Yi Shiwen and really wanted him to win. If Zhu Bing Sun won, then it won't be worth looking at, because almost every year in the past, the same thing had happened over and over in the seed disciple competition. Everyone was craving for a miracle, a heart-pumping legend to take birth in front of their eyes, a miracle that they would never forget. And if Yi Shiwen actually won, then that would be entirely different, because it would create a historical record, a record that had never been created ever in the history of a Yuan school. It would be like witnessing the birth of a miracle, a legend, and after winning this round, his next opponent would be an elite seed disciple and also one of the strongest experts. If Yi Shiwen won against such an opponent in the next round, then he would be able to create history, create myth in a Yuan school. Everyone was supporting Yi Shiwen and wanted him to win, rather than a stereotyped warrior like Zhu Bing Sun. Due to this, Zhu Bing Sun's complexion suddenly changed and became unsightly. He was extremely furious and was looking at Yi Shiwen with killing intent overflowing from his eyes. Chapter 139, Martial Arts Abolished, Yi Shiwen. Today is the day you die. A cruel smile appeared on Zhu Bingsun's face. He hated Yi Shiwen and finally got the opportunity to take revenge. Zhu Bingsun's terrifying and extraordinary aura instantly released on the arena, and Zhen Yuan overflowed everywhere, revealing the fact that he was already at the peak of Xiantian's 6th stage. Finally, at this time, the complexions on the faces of all of the disciples and elders suddenly changed. Perhaps the strength of a master at the peak of Xiantian's 6th stage couldn't be regarded as anything, but this was the semi-final round of seed disciple competition, and displaying such strength on the arena was definitely a huge variable. What? How is this possible? An elder said in an astonished manner while his widened eyes were staring towards the arena. It was obvious the impact of Zhu Bingsun's strength was significant on not just disciples but elders as well. Above the high stand, a cruel look flashed in Luo Yifun's eyes, while he was looking at Yi Shiwen. I never thought that this Zhu Bingsun would actually have such strength. Well, if this is the case, then I am afraid that this time, Yi Shiwen is in a very dangerous situation. I heard that there is a feud going on between Zhu Bingsun and Yi Shiwen. Perhaps this time, Yi Shiwen is going to suffer a cruel fate at the hands of Zhu Bingsun, because it doesn't seem like he will go easy on Yi Shiwen. If I was him, then I will not set foot on the arena, because if I set foot on the arena, then looking at Zhu Bingsun's attitude, it would be no different than fighting in the life and death arena. That's why you can never reach the same height as Yi Shiwen. If he concedes in this fight, then from now on, his heart of martial arts will completely break, and after that, it will be difficult for him to advance even an inch forward, and especially for a genius, it will be no different than living death, so he might as well die now. I did not think that you have the courage to come up, but now that you have come up, you won't get an opportunity to go down. Zhu Bingsun sneered again and again. For him, it didn't matter whether Yi Shiwen came up or not, he was willing to accept both. If Yi Shiwen would come up, then he would seize the opportunity to kill him, and if perhaps Yi Shiwen didn't come up, then it would show that he was afraid, that he was actually a timid man who was afraid of getting into trouble, and it would permanently leave a stain on his reputation. Then Yi Shiwen won't be able to live bravely and fearlessly, and by that time, it won't even be necessary to kill Yi Shiwen. Your rubbish talks are really annoying. Yi Shiwen indifferently said. If you are so eager to commit suicide, I'll gladly help you out. A sinister look appeared on Zhu Bingsun's face as he said. Zhu Bingsun grasped towards the void and suddenly grabbed a red-colored double-edged sword, very exquisite, but at this time, instantly, the whole arena as if turned into a volcano and heat waves started to blow in all directions. This was actually a spiritual tool, not a fake spiritual tool like pseudo-spiritual tool or something, but a real and authentic spiritual tool, driven by Zhen Yuan. When Zhu Bingsun took out this real spiritual tool, suddenly, it seemed as if the whole atmosphere started to boil. It was obvious that a pseudo-spiritual tool couldn't be a match for this spiritual tool. Spiritual tool, coupled with the inherent strength of peak Xiantian's 6th stage, who could be Zhu Bingsun's opponent in the seed disciple competition. Suddenly, all of the disciples in the crowd, who were cheering for Yi Shiwen a while ago, were immediately surrounded by despair and started worrying for Yi Shiwen. Looking at the current situation, it seemed absolutely impossible for Yi Shiwen to win against Zhu Bingsun. Even among the core disciples, not everyone could have spiritual tools. Only a small part of core disciples possessed spiritual tools, and even if it was only a low-grade spiritual tool, its might was completely a huge mess and hard to deal with. Yi Shiwen, today you will die, I must give you an ugly death. Zhu Bingsun said in a cold voice. If you think you will be able to beat me relying on this, then you are too naive. Yi Shiwen said in a calm voice. This is the final struggle. Zhu Bingsun shouted, his red sword danced, and in an instant, red flame roared and surrounded the red sword, and it seemed as if the entire air was burning, issuing zizi burning sound, and it instantly went towards Yi Shiwen. The roaring flame condensed into a flaming red dragon, and it seemed its claws were tearing the world itself, while it nipped towards Yi Shiwen, as if it was going to swallow Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sneered, looked coldly at Zhu Bingsun, and in a flash, terrifying peerless waves of Zhen Yuan wantonly rippled out of his body. Yi Ziwen's hand extended with ease, Zhen Yuan condensed on it and it directly turned into a claw, and immediately rushed towards Zhu Bingsun's flaming red dragon. The next instant, Yi Ziwen's big claw directly grabbed the flaming red dragon and fiercely crushed it. What is this? It is impossible. On the high stand, Luo Yifan suddenly stood up from his seat and looked incredibly at Yi Shiwen. He just couldn't believe his eyes when he actually saw Yi Shiwen using Zhen Yuan. How could Yi Shiwen refine Zhen Yuan? He had gathered information about Yi Shiwen and knew that he had not yet entered into the Xiantian 6th stage, so how could he refine Zhen Yuan? Also, if he was really not at Xiantian 6th stage, then it was even more bizarre that he had been able to refine Zhen Yuan. At this point, everyone realized this simple fact. If Yi Shiwen could use Zhen Yuan, then there was no difference left between him and a master of Xiantian 6th stage. It was really an unwise step not to kill Yi Shiwen while he had the chance. The killing intention suddenly increased inside Luo Yifan's heart as he was witnessing the scene of Yi Shiwen using Zhen Yuan with a mad look in his eyes. How is this possible? At this time, Lin Zhentian also suddenly jumped up from his seat and looked at Yi Shiwen with disbelief, then said, "How is this possible? He obviously stepped into the Xiantian realm not long ago, then how can he refine Zhen Yuan so quickly?" Many elders and true disciples sitting on the high stand had bewildered looks on their faces. Originally, when they found out that Zhu Bingsun was at the peak of Xiantian 6th stage, then that had made them quite surprised, but after all, Zhu Bingsun had been a master at the peak of Xiantian 5th stage for some time, so if he managed to break into the Xiantian 6th stage, then although it was surprising, but it was not bewildering. However, when they saw Yi Shiwen using Zhen Yuan and his strength also seemed comparable to the masters of Xiantian 6th stage, and this immediately made them unable to sit still. One must know, there was a heaven and earth difference between Xiantian 6th stage and Xiantian 5th stage, and Yi Shiwen managed to refine Zhen Yuan without even reaching the Xiantian 6th stage, but he definitely possessed the combat strength of Xiantian 6th stage realm. There were shocked looks on the faces of many people because perhaps this scene had totally disturbed their logic. One must know that Yi Shiwen already possessed the strength equivalent to the master of the Xiantian 6th stage without even stepping into the Xiantian 6th stage. Such a peerless genius, he clearly surpassed the previous peerless genius, Qi Fifan. Although Qi Fifan was very powerful, but even he had been unable to show such an extent of progress and strength in his era. Also, Yi Shiwen had yet to break through to the Xiantian 6th stage. In that case, since he had not stepped into the Xiantian sextet and still managed to see through the mysteries of Zhen Yuan and refined as well, such a person was absolutely a rare talent. How is this even possible? Yi Shiwen has been able to refine Zhen Yuan, and that too at such a profound level. It is really terrifying. This is just great. Now we can see a fierce competition between the two evenly matched sides. All of disciples were shocked, but then suddenly detonated the scene with their loud cheers. All of a sudden, numerous pairs of eyes were firmly fixated on the two men, and were probably waiting for the fierce battle to start. Although, it was a seed disciple competition, but this fight was clearly going to be at the level of fights between two core disciples. This fight would be no different than the fights between front-row seed disciples who were on the verge of becoming core disciples. These disciples who were almost on the verge of becoming core disciples had just entered into the Xiantian 6th stage, although they had not completely transformed Xiantian Zhenqi into Zhen Yuan because of the difficulty of conversion, and it took a long time. For some people it took a few days, for some it took several months, and sometimes it could also need a full year to attain complete conversion. Sometime even longer than that. Moreover, the strength of these people was obviously inferior to the two contenders present on the arena because Yi Shiwen had already completely transformed Zhen Yuan and Zhu Bingxing was at the peak of Xiantian 6th stage. At this time, above the arena, Yi Ziwen's whole body was covered with Zhen Yuan and fluttering his clothes, and suddenly, from his body, a formidable and peerless aura scattered in all directions, just like layer upon layer waves were rushing in the ocean. Zhu Bingsun, you think you can elevate your skills by relying on someone else, and you will still be my opponent? Trash will forever be trash, and today, I'll educate you and allow you to see the huge gap between us, so that you never bear the thought of challenging me ever again. Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. Yi Shiwen, just because you managed to refine Zhen Yuan, don't be so confident, because even if you step into the Xiantian 6th stage, you will still not be my opponent. Today, I will crush you once and forever. Zhu Bingsun roared, his eyes were filled with jealousy. Why, just why, in order to gain strength, he had to pay a huge price, but this Yi Shiwen, why did he possess such insane strength even though he recently joined the main sect? Yi Shiwen, die! Zhu Bingsun roared, and along with his red sword, he turned into a streamer and instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. His entire body was flaming with rampaging fire, and from top to bottom, his body looked like the flames itself. Yi Shiwen took out his long blade, but he wasn't holding the blade in his hand because while using the might of Lingqi, he didn't need to hold the blade in his hand. A radiant blade light chopped out in the air at a stunning speed. Two flashes of light severely clashed in the middle of the arena, causing an endless blast which instantly boiled the atmosphere inside the arena, surging out around the perimeter of the set protection enchantment, and at this time, it also began to fracture. Since this protection enchantment was designed only to sustain the battles of Seed Disciple level, but the current battle had reached the fighting level of Core Disciples. Boom! The whole enchantment suddenly disrupted and the blast wave swept toward countless disciples who had to instantly use Jin Qi to resist. All of the disciples exclaimed at the extremely terrifying might of this attack. Poof! Zhu Bingsun spouted blood and his whole body flew upside down. After all, he had recently reached the peak of Xiantian 6th stage and hadn't used the genuine method to achieve that, so compared with a genuine master of peak of Xiantian 6th stage, his own strength was quite lacking, not to mention, even if he was a genuine master of peak Xiantian 6th stage, he would still not be a match of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen used Celestial Step and his figure instantly overtook Zhu Bingsun's inverted flying figure, then put out his hand to firmly grasp Zhu Bingsun's neck, just like an iron hoop, binding around his nape. Yi Shiwen, I will kill you. This enmity is absolutely irreconcilable. Zhu Bingsun yelled, but at this instant, Yi Ziwen's hand clutched even more tightly, and Zhu Bingsun was unable to breathe or talk. Overreaching yourself, just depending on your own strength, you tried to kill me not just once, but again and again, this is your retribution. Yi Shiwen said in a loud voice, accumulated Zhen Yuan in his other hand, and in a flash, it went towards the dantian of Zhu Bingsun and instantly blasted. Bang! Zhu Bingsun's dantian was immediately destroyed, and with this, Yi Shiwen abolished his martial arts. Chapter 140 Mutual Confrontation. I never thought that Zhu Bingsun would actually lose. It's almost like a miracle. Who would have thought that Zhu Bingsun would actually be defeated even after being at the peak of Xiantian 6th stage, and he also possessed a spiritual tool. Indeed, although Zhu Bingsun has already entered into the realm of peak Xiantian 6th stage, but the Yi Shiwen cannot be taken lightly since he has already refined Zhen Yuan. Yes, before the battle actually started, no one thought that he actually possessed such incredible strength. It's a pity. If these two hadn't bumped into each other in the semi-final round, then they could undoubtedly obtain the places of champion and runner-up in the final round. But didn't you just listen to what Yi Shiwen said a moment ago, that Zhu Bingsun is actually working for someone, and that person must have used some means to enhance his strength? So that's how it is. No wonder. Actually, I know that Zhu Bingsun, very arrogant, but his strength was ordinary, but all of a sudden, he became so formidable, which makes me want to think, just whose is behind him? You don't know? I heard that Zhu Bingsun has joined the Fan's Hen Palace, the faction of Brother Luo, a true disciple. 5 years ago, Brother Luo entered into the ranks of true disciples, and Zhu Bingsun has only recently joined his faction. So, then, the one behind Zhu Bingsun is actually Brother Luo? Hush, hush, Brother Luo is on the high stand. If he heard, then you will surely die. Don't you want to live? A disciple cautiously said. Even if Brother Luo is a true disciple, he cannot do such a thing because it will simply break the rules of sect. If every true disciple tried to casually enhance the strength of the members of their faction to win the championship, then these true disciples would end up controlling the outcomes of these battles. Furthermore, the competition would lose its meaning and there would be no point for us to come and watch. Generally speaking, so long as stepped into the Xiantian sixth stage, disciples would generally choose to become core disciples, because, compared to the core disciples, the treatment of inner disciples was very different, and this was also in order to keep the strength of strong inner disciples in check and encourage them to strive and become core disciples. By staying in the ranks of inner disciples, he seized the opportunities of other inner disciples. But disciples were not forced to choose between inner or core ranks. The decision to choose was solely up to them. So if Zhu Bingsun wanted to participate in the seed disciple competition, despite being a master at the peak of Xiantian sixth stage, it could not be regarded as breaking the rules. In fact, in the past, many disciples of Xiantian sixth stage had appeared in the seed disciple competition. If he had achieved his current strength relying on his own practice, then no one would say anything, but a moment ago, Yi Shiwen mentioned that his strength was not due to his own practice, but he had cheated and undergone forced enhancement of his strength, and was sent to participate, which was tantamount to committing a huge taboo and clearly violated the rules. Since the treatment obtained by the disciples of inner rank and core rank was different, the resources given to the inner disciples were always inferior in comparison to the resources given to the core disciples by the sect. If core disciples also participated in this competition and strived for championship, then there would be no hope left for the inner disciples. Therefore, this matter was something that really incurred public wrath. These discussions were going on in whispers only, but as more and more people entered the discussion, gradually, these whispers turned into noise. Above the high stand, Luo Yifun's complexion was somewhat unsightly and loudly snorted. Of course, the discussions of these inner and outer disciples were naturally not causing any impact on him, because for a true disciple like him, he didn't need to give explanation to them. The reason of his vexation was that he miscalculated once again and allowed Yi Shiwen to escape, which made him very angry, extremely angry. This made him feel like his self-esteem had been provoked. Yi Shiwen must die at all costs. In the heart of Luo Yifun, the intention to kill was boiling. Yi Shiwen not only defeated Zhu Bingsun, who had been trying to be insufferably arrogant a moment ago, but completely abolished his martial arts, and without even thinking twice, in front of such a large crowd, he reached out his hand and directly crippled Zhu Bingsun. None of the elders came to stop him, because right after standing on this arena, even life and death remained only in the hands of the contenders and no one was allowed interfere or question their actions. Yi Shiwen had frightened a large number of inner disciples and outer disciples. He was unexpectedly so fierce. Although when Yi Shiwen was winning all the initial rounds in a relaxed manner, everyone guessed that he must be saving his real strength, his true strength, and should be very formidable, but they never thought that his true strength would actually be so tyrannical. He was easily and readily using Zhenyuan, and his strength also turned out to be many times more compared to that arrogant Zhu Bingsun. Yi Shiwen was just a new disciple, so how could he be so formidable? The common sense simply did not conform to his existence, especially for those senior disciples. It was like that kind of impulse to punch the wall. They had spent so many years in the main sect, while Yi Shiwen had not even spent 1 year in the main sect. These disciples had been practicing for so many years in the main sect, but the difference in their strengths and Yi Zaiwen's strength was just like the difference between heaven and earth. In their hearts, Yi Shiwen had suddenly turned into an enigmatic figure. Compared to the other disciples, who were totally stunned after witnessing Yi Zaiwen's true strength, the disciples of Qianyu faction were celebrating. After all, the stronger Yi Shiwen was, the more secured they would be, then no one would try to bully them, and no one knew when but Yi Zaiwen's image already surpassed Yi Feng, Yan Qiliang, and several other high-level members of Qianyu faction. Although they were still the senior executives of Qianyu faction, while Yi Shiwen almost never took part in any of its affairs, but one must not forget that this was a world where strength was the supreme law, and only an exceptionally strong person could obtain the respect of everyone. Yi Feng and other high-level executives were indeed also competent, and looking at their strengths and talents, they could become outstanding existences among the new disciples, and even within a decade, there was a large possibility that they would break through to the level of core disciples, and in the future, they would most likely become formidable masters. However, they still weren't a match for the current Yi Shiwen, who defeated all his enemies one by one in front of them, which was quite shocking for them to accept. Before, Yi Shiwen had saved them and overcame one difficulty after another, and now he defeated these masters as if he was chopping vegetables. By now, in their hearts, an invincible image of Yi Shiwen had already established itself, along with the faith that there wasn't an enemy that Yi Shiwen couldn't defeat. This was faith in his invincibility, and every faction needed at least one person of this type in order to lead the faction on the path of better development. But the situation in Qianyu faction was rather special, because Yi Shiwen didn't take interest in the affairs of faction. Regardless of what those people were discussing among themselves, Yi Shiwen slowly arrived in front of Zhu Bingsun and said in a cold voice, "Zhu Bingsun, I told you before, if you think you can rely on external means to enhance your strength, then you will regret it. Fortunately, this is not life and death arena, otherwise you would be a pile of rotten meat by now." Yi Shiwen didn't have a favorable impression of Zhu Bingsun and Luo Yifan. Birds of a feather flock together, both of them were the same type of arrogant people who wanted to kill others when they thought that their own dignity had been damaged. Although Zhu Bingsun's martial arts was spent, but he still didn't faint, and at this time, there was an abnormal pernicious look in his eyes. If his eyes had magical powers, then with just a look, he could have stabbed Yi Zaiwen's body and perforated it with countless holes. He hated Yi Shiwen, his pride was his life, but Yi Shiwen had already defeated him twice, and now he simply wanted to commit suicide. If he could sell his soul to the devil to kill Yi Shiwen, he would not hesitate to sell himself to the devil. However, right now, there was no strength left in his body, his dantian was shattered to pieces by Yi Shiwen, and he didn't have any control over the Zhenyuan in his body. The Zhenyuan was running wildly in his meridians like a wild horse, totally out of control, while destroying his meridians and rushing through all his acupuncture points, and so on. But still, he was not aware of the simple fact that if he hadn't provoked Yi Shiwen again and again, then he would not have encountered such a thing, and in his heart, the only thing that remained was pure hatred for Yi Shiwen. If only Yi Shiwen was not there, then he would not be in such a pain. Yi Shiwen looked at Zhu Bingsun lying on the ground, but didn't kill him at the scene, considering that they were already in front of a large crowd, and it was inappropriate, although Zhu Bingsun threatened to kill him again, and many other disciples had also heard it, so even if the executives of Yuan School would inquire, he would openly answer. "Yi Shiwen, this is just a battle on arena, but you are too ruthless. By crippling my subordinate, you dared to offend a true disciple." At this time, a faint voice came from the high stand, and it belonged to Luo Yifan. Yi Shiwen sneered and finally could not bear, and various schemes flashed in his mind instantly. The opposite party was a true disciple, and he had stepped into the truth realm only this decade, but definitely deserved to be respected like other warriors of truth realm. Yi Shiwen was determined to have a hands-on argument with him, but he must have a foolproof plan, because at this point, even one misstep might cause a big trouble. With a cold smile on his face, Yi Shiwen said, "Brother Luo's words are totally biased. Looking at this Zhu Bingsun's strength, it is obvious to everyone that he was cheating. God knows who that dog is that helped him in cheating and actually gave him cheat to enhance his strength and snatched ranks from fellow inner disciples. My strength is small and weak and I couldn't dare to have the slightest relaxation, so I did it by mistake." Yi Shiwen said those words in order to set up a trap for Luo Yifan, and used the resentments of other inner disciples to safeguard his own point while also directed them towards Luo Yifan. Now anyone could figure it out that the one who gave cheat to Zhu Bingsun, in order to enhance his strength, was most probably Luo Yifan. "Shut up, you did it by mistake. You did it in front of so many elders and true disciples, and you actually dare to make such irresponsible remarks. You have clearly tried to take revenge for your personal enmity with him." It was such an obvious provocation, but Luo Yifan was certainly unable to bear it, and although he did not care what these inner and outer disciples thought about him, but when he saw a red fruit kept in the trap designed by Yi Shiwen, he just had to jump, and after he realized his mistake, it made him even more aggrieved. Brother Luo's remarks are one-sided, as they say, the so-called fist has no eyes, no one can anticipate what will happen in a battle, not to mention, according to the rules of this competition, no one investigates the reasons behind someone's life and death, Did Brother Luo perhaps forget about this? Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and the fierce sound waves released from his mouth actually went straight towards Luo Yifan. The disciples immediately had dumbfounded looks on their faces and were totally stunned. They never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually dare to shout at a true disciple like Luo Yifan. This level of boldness was simply great and stunning. Chapter 141. Title: As far as others were concerned, Yi Ziwen's approach could be described as too audacious and reckless. To actually shout and talk back with a true disciple, this was truly bizarre. There was difference of heaven and earth between an inner disciple and a true disciple, and even if Luo Yifan was to kill Yi Shiwen in rage, right on the spot, perhaps, the sect would not be able to do much against him. However, Luo Yifan was already dead set on killing him, and the killing intention could be seen flashing in his eyes, and it seemed as if it could burst out any time. Both sides nearly had no consideration for face anymore, although they were trying to mask their mutual hatred on the surface, but it just didn't make sense because they seemed to be afraid of themselves, that sooner or later, the conflict would erupt between the two, while at this time, Luo Yifan was planning in his heart about how to get rid of Yi Shiwen. And at this moment, Yi Ziwen's mind was also flowing with hundreds of tricks to kill Luo Yifan, because the only way out for the two sides was, you die, I live. However, for the other disciples, they did not know the various matters. The real reason behind this situation was unknown to them. They just felt that Luo Yifan was very strange. Why would he suddenly give cheat to his man to enhance his strength? And Yi Shiwen was even stranger, that he publicly shouted and talked back with a true disciple. Didn't he want to live anymore? Of course, Yi Shiwen naturally had his own plans, because he knew that Lin Zhentian was also on the high stand, and if Luo Yifan tried to attack him, then Lin Zhentian would definitely rush to help him. Although Luo Yifan was strong, but so was Lin Zhentian, and his strength couldn't be underestimated. Therefore, already aware of this fact, Yi Shiwen seemingly made this risky move, but was actually a safe and well-calculated move. Yi Shiwen used cleverly weaved words to shut Luo Yifan's mouth with truth, making him turn into a rude and unreasonable figure in the eyes of everyone. Bold, so you even dare to talk back with me? Luo Yifan's voice thundered from the high stand, and at the same instant, his terrifying and peerless aura came down from the high stand and firmly locked on Yi Shiwen. He felt as if the great might surged from the heaven and crashed on his body. This was the peerless might of a true disciple. It was said that a true disciple gave up affectation to some extent and strived to comprehend the true principles of the world, so they were called true, and to some extent, their coercion was not their personal strength, but it was drawn from the power of the world itself. For ordinary people, it was simply impossible to comprehend the power of the world, so how could they resist? Boom! Yi Shiwen just felt a thrill of horrifying peerless coercion crushing his body, and to fight back, he immediately actuated Zhen Yuan throughout his body. However, right then, Tian Yuan mirror suddenly had a movement and released a faint bloody red light, which wrapped his body, and he felt that the horrifying peerless coercion disappeared without a trace. Yi Shiwen restrained his mind, and with a faint smile on his face, he said, "Brother Luo is highly mistaken. I was not talking back with you, rather I was just thinking that perhaps you have forgotten the sect rules, so I specifically reminded you about them." What? Luo Yifan's doubt-filled voice came from the high stand. He did not think that his peerless coercion wouldn't be able to suppress Yi Shiwen, and an embarrassing look immediately appeared on his face. Just how Yi Shiwen could so quickly and completely disregard his coercion, this boy really knew some secret ways, which made him even more determined in his heart to kill Yi Shiwen. Enough, it's correct that we do not investigate the life and death over the arena, so this matter ends here. At this time, a Taishang elder suddenly said from above the high stand. The status of a Taishang elder was loftier and nobler than other ordinary elders, and even true disciples like Luo Yifan were obedient in front of Taishang elder, and perhaps only peerless true disciples of the level of Chief Yifan could dare to go against a Taishang elder. Yi Shiwen knew that Taishang elder was trying to smooth things over, and as a result of his interference, Luo Yifan suddenly stopped and didn't continue, which clearly displayed the gap between their strengths, because even Luo Yifan couldn't disobey the words of Taishang elder, and there was nothing he could do about it. So long as the strength was enough, it was possible that the situation would have completely turned around. In this round, Yi Shiwen wins. This was a clear victory of Yi Shiwen in this dispute, but in the process, he ended up publicly offending a true disciple, so other people were worried about him. Little brother, you talked back with a true disciple. I am afraid later, he would probably resort to any means to deal with you. Yi Feng arrived next to Yi Shiwen and said in a concerned manner, Brother, rest assured, I will be alright. He cannot reach me, so it doesn't matter even if I had an argument with him. If he wanted to kill me directly, then he would never use a roundabout way of enhancing the strength of Zhu Bingsun to kill me on the arena. Yi Shiwen explained. So that's how it is. Yi Feng hastily said in a worried voice, although he was also a proud and arrogant man, but he was not a fool to not know what kind of existences these true disciples actually were. In total, there were hundreds of thousands of inner disciples, outer disciples and core disciples in Yuan school, and for all of these disciples, their ultimate goal was to strive and become a true disciple. Relax, brother. I'm not some weakling. If he wants to fight, I will surely fight back. Yi Shiwen said to comfort his restless brother. Yi Ziwen's words immediately relieved Yi Feng, although he was still somewhat worried, but he knew that his little brother suddenly changed over a year ago, from an ordinary guy with ordinary thought process into a far-sighted formidable expert, who calculated a lot of things before taking steps and rarely fought a battle where he was not sure of victory. He could make a guess that if Yi Shiwen was so confident, then he certainly had some plans. No matter what, you have to be careful. Even if Luo Yifan doesn't attack himself, he still commands a lot of experts of Fan's Hen Palace, and if they attacked, then it would be very dangerous. Yifeng said, Don't worry, brother, I have a sense of proportion. Yi Shiwen said in a calm manner because he didn't want to add too much pressure on his elder brother. Final round, Yi Shiwen, Nangong Wang. Finally, it was turn for Yi Ziwen's last battle, which was also going to decide the champion of this year's Seed Disciple competition, and in this battle, his opponent was Nangong Wang. Nangong Wang was clad in a magnificent robe and his demeanor looked excellent, just like a handsome dandy young master of an influential clan. It was said that he belonged to an aristocratic clan of Great Yu State, named Nangong Clan, and among all of the inner disciples, he was considered the strongest and obviously at the top. In fact, even some core disciples were not his opponents. Young Yi, congratulations for having such a great advancement in your cultivation. This elder brother knows that he is not your match, but still hopes to exchange pointers with young Yi. Nangong Wang cupped his one hand into the other across his chest and said in a submissive manner. Although he confessed that he possessed inferior strength, but still maintained his elegant bearing, making it very difficult for others to have any sort of ill feeling for him. Yi Shiwen nodded and said with a smile on his face, Such being the case, please begin, brother Nangong Wang. For such a person, it was really hard to have even the slightest feeling of disgust. Yi Shiwen was also not an aggressive person, he was only aggressive for his enemies. He was the type who served wine for his friends, but also used shotgun if the wolves came. He was definitely not the type who would extend the right cheek if someone slapped him on the left cheek, because this was just not his style. Nangong Wang's imposing aura suddenly and completely released out, and it was even slightly better than that of Zhu Bingsun, and Yi Shiwen understood that no wonder Nangong Wang was willing to fight him. He possessed a lot of inherent strength, even warriors of Xiantian 6th stage were not his opponents, and it seemed that he was only a step away, because quantitative changes caused a qualitative change as well, and he only needed to take this step, then perhaps he would immediately reach the peak of Xiantian 6th stage, and soon he would also reach the Xiantian 7th stage. He was definitely a very extraordinary figure. No wonder he was able to occupy the status of strongest seed disciple, and considering such a person, even Zhu Bingsun might not be his opponent. After all, someone else had used cheat to enhance Zhu Bingsun's strength, and the foundation of Nangong Wang looked quite deep and seemed like the real deal. Young Yi, be careful. Nangong Wang didn't forget to remind Yi Shiwen, and right after that, a brown-colored double-edged sword instantly rushed towards him. In a flash, the entire arena was surrounded by dust, as if a sandstorm had suddenly appeared from the desert and hit the arena. The brown-colored sword was drawing support from a concealed sandstorm and instantly split the air, while the whole atmosphere was covered with brown-colored marks and rushed piercing towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was well prepared and had already summoned the vigorous Zhen Yuan to create a barrier to stop the sandstorm away from him, and just then he focused Zhen Yuan in his both eyes, and suddenly his eyesight greatly increased, enough to see right through the sandstorm. Yi Shiwen did not dodge, but directly grasped his palm, which turned into a dragon claw and rapidly grasped toward the brown sword to grab it. He must defeat Nangong Wang by taking the easiest way possible, and Yi Ziwen's best option was to force him to give up. Boom! Nangong Wang's sword severely struck towards the dragon claw of Yi Shiwen and a violent collision occurred, causing a loud air explosion, and the pseudo-spiritual brown sword was directly caught by the dragon claw and could not move anymore. Since Yi Shiwen had practiced tyrant body technique, it has turned his body tough to such an extent that it shocked everyone, and coupled with his hand covered with Zhen Yuan, even pseudo-spiritual brown sword could inflict the slightest damage on his hand. Hoot! Nangong Wang shouted loudly, and suddenly, the entire brown sword started to make a buzzing sound, and the sandstorm instantly gathered around it, condensed into double-edged sand sword and struck towards Yi Shiwen. San! Yi Shiwen gave out a loud shout, and it seemed as if layers after layers of Zhen Yuan was being released from his body, like waves rushing in ocean, and in an instant, these waves of Zhen Yuan spread out and completely disintegrated the double-edged sand sword coming towards Yi Shiwen. And at this time, Yi Shiwen also increased the output of Zhen Yuan in his hand and directly suppressed the rioting brown sword, and with this, he also crushed the only trace of Nangong Wang's hope in this battle. Suddenly the whole brown sword instantly quieted down and no longer resisted. It was peacefully lying down in Yi Ziwen's hand. "Brother Nangong, let me win," Yi Shiwen said while the brown sword was still in his hand. "Thank you, young Yi, for showing mercy," Nangong Wang said, but there was a hint of bitterness hidden in his voice, cursing his own fate for this defeat. In this round, Yi Shiwen wins. This year's Seed Disciple Competition's champion is Yi Shiwen. Chapter 142, Masha Territory Beyond Everyone's Expectations. Yi Shiwen actually became the chief Seed Disciple, and the news quickly spread throughout Yiyuan School. Yi Shiwen broke all records. It could be said that before, Yi Ziwen's record was at the same level as that of Qi Fifan, but now, a new disciple like Yi Shiwen had become chief Seed Disciple. This news suddenly engulfed the entire Yiyuan School. One must know that in the past, a new disciple was able to break into the ranks of Seed Disciples, and later, he was able to become a true disciple, although he fell from glory midway, but before he fell, he used to a temporary magnificent existence. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had broken all previous records and made new records. The status of chief Seed Disciple was equivalent to being the strongest of all the inner disciples, and along with this title, his reputation had been completely established in Yiyuan School. In addition to this, no one knew who actually spread the rumor, but the rumor about contradiction between Yi Shiwen and Luo Yifan suddenly spread like forest fire in the entire Yiyuan School. According to the rumor, reportedly, Luo Yifan suspected that someone related to him had been killed by Yi Shiwen, but Yi Shiwen did not admit his crime, so Luo Yifan was planning to kill Yi Shiwen because he didn't want to mistakenly let the real culprit escape. In a short while, the whole main sect was in uproar, and Yi Ziwen's fame had completely erupted throughout the sect, and not just that, his performance had also left deep impression on true disciples and elders. And during this time, Qianyu faction also showed a huge development. However, there were still many people who were considering the contradiction between Yi Shiwen and Luo Yifan as a bad omen for Qianyu faction's future. Although Yi Shiwen was very formidable and would most likely enter into the ranks of top-level true disciples, but that was a thing in the future, and the reality was that at present he was going to face the potential retaliation from Luo Yifan, which made a lot of people to suspect the future prospects of Qianyu faction. However, there were still a lot of people who were willing to give it a try and join Qianyu faction, because there was huge possibility that they might enjoy the future magnificence and benefit a lot from Yi Ziwen's future glory. Regarding the matters of Qianyu faction, Yi Shiwen was still not willing to manage anything, so Yi Feng and Yan Qiliang were made responsible for managing Qianyu faction. As the chief seed disciple of this year's seed disciple competition, Yi Shiwen received the rewards from the hands of a sect elder. He received a total of over 50,000 spirit stones, and it could be said that this year, Yiyuan School was really willing to bleed money to cultivate these seed disciples, because in the previous seed disciple competition, the seed disciples didn't even receive 1/10 of the current amount. And sect was willing to be so generous in order to help the disciples to resist against the followers of Bai Majiao. Of course, there were a lot of people who had greedy and envious looks in their eyes when they saw He Dan being rewarded to the top 3 seed disciples. As chief seed disciple, Yi Shiwen received 3 He Dan, the second-ranked seed disciple, Nangong Wang, received 2 He Dan, and the third-ranked seed disciple received only 1. Since He Dan main function was to slightly increase the chances of successfully breaking through from the Xiantian 5th stage, however it didn't guarantee a successful breakthrough, so sect would reward several He Dan to the winners. After all of the seed disciples received their respective rewards from the sect, Yi Shiwen and other seed disciples tidied up and went towards a small dimension, located in the depths of Yiyuan School. This small world was called Masha Territory, and inside it, there were countless devils in captivity, and also had a long history of countless years. This Masha Territory was just like the Huanma Territory, and in both these territories, Yiyuan School had kept a large number of devils as captives. However, the type of devils found in Masha Territory was completely different from Huanma Territory. It was said that a long time ago, a great devil development was carried out in Devil World, but it invoked a great disaster, and a huge crack opened up in the space, which disrupted the space into many fragments, and this Masha Territory was only one of the fragments. Later, the founder of Yiyuan School used his magical powers to pull over this Masha Territory from the chaos. Inside the Masha Territory, devils gradually took birth and also developed their own heritage. They were very tough to deal with, and there were several devils who had already stepped into the truth realm. Generally speaking, Masha Territory was opened up only for true disciples. However, this time, it was being opened for the seed disciples, so that they could practice and hone their skills in order to prepare themselves for the conference among the 4 large sects and the Imperial clan, which was only a month away. In addition to these inner seed disciples, some of the seed disciples among the core disciples were also going to enter Masha Territory, and even some true disciples had also been allowed to enter, in order to train themselves for the upcoming conference. All of this was for the conference which was going to take place near East China Sea after a month. Standing outside the Masha Territory, there was a huge stone gate and a blockade enchantment to separate Yiyuan School and Masha Territory, and outside the enchantment stood 10 Yuan School's elders, and although there were few ordinary-looking elders present in front of a lot of disciples, but no one dared to underestimate these people, because these elders were all super experts. And even if there were a lot of truth-level devils inside the Masha Territory, Yiyuan School had only dispatched few elders to guard the gate. These inner seed disciples had arrived at the entrance of Masha Territory under the leadership of these elders, otherwise they couldn't possibly find this place. After everyone seemed prepared, one of the 10 elders suddenly said, "You may want to think properly before you advance. In the Masha Territory, there are a lot of dangers. If you are inattentive, then will surely die. All of you are outstanding inner disciples and can surely step into the ranks of core disciples in the future, and some of you even have the opportunity to become true disciples. So if you died here, then it would all be in vain. If you want to quit, now is your chance." After his speech was complete, the elder glanced at these disciples, and when he saw that no one was going to quit, he didn't say anything and immediately used spirit technique towards the huge enchantment, which then opened with a loud bang, and waves of mochi immediately blew out from inside the Masha Territory, along with a vast breath that also bubbled out from inside and gave a cold and gloomy feeling to everyone standing outside. Everyone was determined and no one withdrew. All of the 100 seed disciples entered the Masha Territory. Looking at the departing figures of these disciples, one of the 10 gatekeeper elders sighed and said, 100 elites entered. I really do not know how many will come out alive after a month from now. So long as at least one useful disciple comes out, our work will not go in vain this time. Another elder said, "At present, Bai Mojiao's movements are getting bigger and bigger, simply menacing, and in that case, we simply do not have time to allow these disciples to mature slowly. As long as one of them becomes a true disciple, the sacrifices of others are worth it." This was the law of the jungle which only favored the strong. From the total 2 billion people selected by Yuan school, in the eyes of an average person, these few disciples were truly the cream bunch and rare geniuses. However, for a major sect like Yuan school, they were actually like leeks. When one wave was cut, another wave would grow again, and this could go for an endless span of time. Becoming a true disciple was very difficult, but once achieved, even the worth of 10,000 inner disciples was nothing in comparison. So among these 100 people, as long as one person managed to reap benefits from this training and became a true disciple, then even if other people perished, this was still worth it. The reality was very cruel, and everyone knew that among these seed disciples, there might be only one person who would stand out and everybody else would be nothing but stepping stones, but they all felt that they would be the one to succeed, and no one thought that they could end up being the stepping stones. Soon, Yi Shiwen entered the Masha territory, but he did not choose to go together with others, but went his own way. This Masha territory was similar to the Huanma territory. There was desolate scenes spread almost everywhere, and looked similar to a bleak picture, hellfire raging in all directions. The sky was gray in color while there was no day, no night, and no seasons as well. This was truly the devil's environment, and as far as humans were concerned, even the warriors would feel very uncomfortable here, let alone ordinary people, and there was simply no way to survive in such an environment. So the devils born in Devil World were especially formidable in order to survive in such a harsh environment, but they also yearned for a good environment like the fine and soothing human habitat, just like the environment in Zhenwujie. So for innumerable years, they would always think of ways to invade, and this was the root cause of innumerable years of war between Devil World and Zhenwujie. Devil race did not put human race on the same level and thought that human race did not deserve to enjoy such a good environment. This was their main objective for so many years, which slowly turned into conflict, then gave birth to a deep hatred, and finally, they became sworn enemies. Yi Mo was sitting on Yi Zaiwen's shoulder. It was small and had a little weight. Yi Mo took a deep breath and absorbed the mochi present in Masha territory and immediately felt refreshed. Although it was not a devil, but should also be regarded as a devil spirit, and he didn't differentiate between lingqi and mochi and could absorb both, however still preferred to absorb mochi. Yi Shiwen, I think that Luo Yifan will not let you off so easily. He will soon plan something against you. Yimo said, "Well, I know." Yi Shiwen nodded. "It is because of this that even if I know that Masha territory is a dangerous place, but I still didn't go together with other disciples, because who knows how many of them turn out to be the spies of Luo Yifan." Yi Shiwen said because he doubted that there were Luo Yifan's spies among the seed disciples who entered the Masha territory, and some of them might disclose information about him to Luo Yifan. It was very dangerous to stay with them, so he decided to move on his own because that way he would be relatively safer. Although, Yi Shiwen was also scheming how to kill Luo Yifan, but he was clearly aware of the fact that his own strength was still too lacking compared to the formidable strength of Luo Yifan. They simply weren't in the same realm, so before he would actually become capable enough to kill Luo Yifan, he must be careful till then, because if he wasn't careful enough, then the one to die would actually be him. Before he gained enough strength, he must take all his steps carefully, without being negligent. Now you can practice without any worries because it just so happens that this place is dangerous for others, but for you, it is a very good place to practice. Yimo said, "How can you say that?" Yi Shiwen asked. "For others, those devils are very dangerous, but that is just for others. For you, those devils are simply nothing." Yi Mo said, "Tianyuan mirror is the spiritual tool of the great devil king itself, and for those devil, it is a natural adversary, so as long as you have Tianyuan mirror, you're the next sovereign king of the devil race." Chapter 143, Azura. For others, those devils are very dangerous, but that is just for others. For you, those devils are simply nothing. Yi Mo said, "Tianyuan mirror is the spiritual tool of the great devil king itself, and for those devil, it is a natural adversary, so as long as you have Tianyuan mirror, you're the next sovereign king of the devil race. Yi Shiwen suddenly remembered, at that time near the blood pool, he saw how those devils were prostrating themselves simply like slaves in front of Emo. He had also started to somewhat believe that the previous master of Emo, about whom it always talked, was really the great devil king and these devils were actually his slaves. But these devils have been isolated for so long in this small dimension, they will not recognize the Tianyuan mirror. Yi Shiwen said because the devils in Masha territory were different from the devils of Devil World because they had been held captive in Masha territory for a long time, secluded, without any contact with the outside world. It doesn't matter if they do not recognize, Tianyuan mirror still has a restraining effect on them. Emo said, "You are the master of Tianyuan mirror, the next sovereign king of devil race, they are your slaves." Emo said, regarding the slave thing just mentioned by Emo, Yi Shiwen did not care because the important thing was strength, even if what Yi Mo said was true and its former master was the great devil king, but he must have been able to become sovereign of devils not just by relying on Tianyuan mirror, rather by using his own formidable strength. If he was not strong and wanted to receive the devil race as his slaves, then won't he simply be courting death? However, there was one thing that Yi Shiwen could say for certain, that the Tianyuan mirror should have great restraining effect on the devils. Yi Shiwen did not stop and dashed all the way toward the depths of Masha territory. Above a piece of land in the depths of Masha territory, Yi Shiwen was surrounded by more than a dozen devils of Azura race, and the strength of each of these Azura devil was above Xiantian's 6th stage, which was quite terrifying. Azura race was an influential clan of devil race, quite extraordinary, and was considered more formidable and fiercer compared to the demon race. These Azura devils were strangely smiling and advancing towards Yi Shiwen. These are Azura devils and belong to the Azura clan of devil race, but still belong to the bottom class of slaves. The real aristocracy class of great Azura clan takes birth as truth-level masters. Yi Mo explained and introduced Azura clan to Yi Shiwen while still sitting on his shoulder. Yi Shiwen secretly sighed while listening to the explanation of Yi Mo. Azura devils took birth as truth-level masters. The might of this clan really went against the heaven's will. In the devil world there are 8 great royal clans and Azura clan is also one of them, a truly formidable clan. The founder of Azura clan had a huge body and was simply invincible and a universally matchless Azura devil, who had also become the sovereign of devil world. Therefore these Azura devils are so powerful and fierce. Yi Mo informed about the secrets of the devil race to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen continued to listen to the commentary of Yi Mo, while he kept on shooting his palms and sweeping terrifying strong astral winds to constantly resist the attack of these Azura devils. An Azura rushed over, condensed his both hands into fists, and in a flash, his fist shot toward Yi Shiwen with a boom. It was an extremely clever fist technique and was called Azura Fist. It was said that relying on the peerless might of Azura Fist, the founder of Azura clan was considered invincible in the devil world, but at this time, the Azura Fist technique of these Azura devils wasn't concise and didn't contain the true essence of original Azura Fist, created by the founder of Azura clan, and although their Azura Fist technique had no essence, but it could still be regarded as a superior fist technique and its prowess was enormous. It was said the bodies of devils of Azura race were simply unparalleled and among all the devil clans in Devil World, they possessed the most tyrannical bodies, second to none, peerless and invincible. They believed that their bodies was the most invincible among all the devils of devil race, and between heaven and earth, no one should be able to take on their double fists. Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest fear and immediately stepped forward, spread out his palms, and used coiling dragon palm, hidden dragon rises from the abyss, his both hands transformed into dragon claws, then instantly rushed forward. Bang! 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 The fist and palm collided and produced bang-bang metal collision sound. Roar! The Azura devil screamed pitifully, both of its arms softened and drooped, were directly broken off by Yi Shiwen in one shot. Although it was correct that Azura devils possessed unparalleled bodies and were really very fierce, but Yi Shiwen had also practiced tyrant body technique and the might granted by this technique was unparalleled as well. Yi Mo had inadvertently said that this power technique was quite fierce and its might was terrifying, and must have been used by mighty tyrants in the ancient ages of Zhen Wujie. The body of an Azura devil was truly tyrannical, but it should not be a match for Yi Shiwen, who had practiced tyrant body technique. These Azura devils were simply not the opponents of Yi Shiwen unless a great Azura devil was to appear. However, many years had passed and no such Azura appeared. Yi Shiwen wanted to ask several questions, but it didn't seem like Yi Mo was in a mood to answer, so he didn't continue to ask. Yi Shiwen shot his palm and a dragon claw loomed in front of him. Bang! An Azura devil screams pitifully and was shot dead by Yi Ziwen's tyrannical palm. However, right then, Tianyuan mirror instantly released intermittent bloody red waves of light, and the Jingqi of that Azura devil's body was instantly absorbed by this bloody red light. Then it gradually transformed into the most refined form of Jingqi, and without carrying any devil attributes, it emerged inside Yi Shiwen's body and was directly absorbed by him. Yi Shiwen only felt that his skills suddenly deepened 1 point, and a delighted expression immediately appeared on his face and said, "I did not think that this Tianyuan mirror would really be this effective, but there won't be any after effects of this, right?" "Of course not. This is the tool of Great Devil King. Do you think that it is similar to the Modeo-based power techniques used by those inferior devils that it will have after effects?" Yi Mo said in a somewhat annoyed manner. Yi Shiwen nodded because he also felt that it didn't seem like anything was wrong with the influx of refined Jingqi emerging inside his body. Instead, it was purer and more polished than his own Jingqi essence. Yi Shiwen was suddenly overjoyed and directly rushed into the group of Azura devil to kill them all. Bang! 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 The Quanjin of those Azura devils fiercely boomed into the body of Yi Shiwen, but he instantly mustered endless Zhen Yuan around his body, which completely roused his clothes. These Quanjin were instantly blocked off by the cover of Zhen Yuan around his body and did not cause even a tiny bit of injury to his body. Yi Shiwen didn't even take out his long blade, and to completely kill them off, he directly displayed the great might of Coiling Dragon Palm, but he didn't jump in the group of Azura devils. Rather, he unceasingly shot his palms from far, and each of his palm would explode the air, and in a flash, the surrounding area in a radius of 1 li was completely ravaged by the fierce palm winds created by Yi Ziwen's palm attacks. Slowly, Yi Shiwen did not just stick to his palm method, he also used Chinese boxing, blade skills. In short, he started using all kinds of martial arts technique, as if they were on his fingertips, and he used them instantly so long as using one seemed appropriate. Boom! Yi Shiwen finally used Rushing Thunder Hand, Lighting and Thunder, and gave the final blow, which completely annihilated all of the Azura devils in the group, and all of their Jingqi were instantly transformed by Tianyuan mirror and absorbed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen thought that if he continued this way, then he was not far from having a breakthrough into the Xiantian 5th stage, and at that time, his fighting strength would also have a significant breakthrough and would become directly comparable to the fighting strength of the masters of Xiantian 7th stage. Then, he would be able to break into the Xiantian 6th stage at the fastest speed. Although, it was said that breaking through from Xiantian 5th stage into the Xiantian 6th stage was considered one of the biggest barriers for masters of Xiantian realm, and most of the warriors couldn't cross this threshold because the biggest hurdle they faced was transformation of Xiantian Jinqi to Zhen Yuan. However, Yi Shiwen had already finished this step in advance, so he could easily break into the realm of Xiantian 6th stage, and perhaps, this would be the simplest breakthrough for him. By that time, his fighting strength would increase so much that he would be able to contend with the masters of Xiantian 7th stage, and at that time, it could be said for certain that Yi Shiwen would have sufficient strength to protect himself. As long as Luo Yifan didn't personally come into action, Yi Shiwen would have enough strength to protect himself, and even think about anti-kill. Yi Shiwen, go on like this and you'll soon be able to have a breakthrough. It's not too far from you and shouldn't take too long. Yi Mo laughed and said, but if you are aiming for a quicker breakthrough, killing these Xiantian 6th stage Azura devils is not enough. You should find the formidable ones, Xiantian 7th stage, 8th stage and even Xiantian 9th stage devils, then behead them, capture their Jingqi, and you will see your cultivation growing by leaps and bounds. This is really not a problem? Yi Shiwen asked. Rest assured, because the Tianyuan mirror can completely suppress them. Yemo said. As long as you are getting help from Tianyuan mirror, those devils are nothing in front of you, and follow my advice and you will be able to save countless years of penance to reach the truth realm. As long as you are willing to go the devil world, soon you'll be able to break into a previously unimaginable realm, and you will also become the next sovereign king of devil world. I should go to the devil world and become a devil king? Yi Shiwen shook his head and said, maybe in the future I will have a trip to the devil world, but definitely not now, and absolutely not to become some devil. Regarding the proposal of Yi Mo about him becoming the sovereign king of devil world, Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest interest, but regarding the other proposal of killing Xiantian 7th, 8th and 9th stage devils, Yi Shiwen was very much interested. There was a difference of heaven and earth between Xiantian 6th stage devils and formidable devils of Xiantian 7th stage, 8th stage and 9th stage. In fact, in the Xiantian realm, there was huge strength difference between each of the stages. If he could kill higher-level devils, then his speed of practice would naturally rise skyrocketing. Come on, we should look for some higher-level devils. Yi Shiwen said. No problem, listen to me, Tianyuan mirror can feel the presence of all of the devils, it can even perceive their strength levels, so you don't need to worry about finding them. Yi Mo said in a confidence tone. While chatting like this with Yi Mo, Yi Shiwen rushed towards the depths of Masha territory. Chapter 144. The legendary Hell Masha territory was a dangerous place, with countless dangers, but as far as Yi Shiwen was concerned, it actually did not matter because by virtue of the power of Tianyuan mirror, as long as Yi Shiwen didn't encounter truth-level devils, all other devils would have to face the restraining effect of Tianyuan mirror, then it would be easy for Yi Shiwen to behead them. Along with a large number of Xiantian 7th-stage devils, a lot of formidable devils of Xiantian 8th-stage devils were also killed by Yi Shiwen. Then with the help of Tianyuan mirror, he absorbed their Jingqi and finally reached the peak saturation point of Xiantian 4th stage. Now, he was almost going to break through to the Xiantian 5th stage. Bang! Yi Ziwen's fist rumbled, and with a bang, an Azura devil at the Xiantian 7th stage was blasted to smithereens. However, just before his death, there was an incredible look in his eyes, and it seemed as if he couldn't accept that he was going to die like this. After all, he was an Azura of the Xiantian 7th stage and was still going to be killed by a human like Yi Shiwen who was merely at the peak of Xiantian 4th stage. It was simply a great insult and shameful. Suddenly, a terrifying Quan Jin dropped down from the sky and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. This fist attack was quite overbearing and strange, as if it was an attack from a flying immortal in the sky, and instantly approached Yi Shiwen, without giving any warning. Yi Shiwen was simply too late to dodge and suffered this fist attack. Pooh! Yi Shiwen spouted blood and looked up but saw nothing but void, and then suddenly, the figure of an Azura gradually took shape in midair. It was a young Azura devil, and like other Azura devils, he looked quite ugly, but unlike others that Yi Shiwen had seen and beheaded so far, this one possessed no Bliki, and just from a glance, Yi Shiwen understood that this young Azura devil belonged to the noble class of Azura clan. Yi Shiwen felt a bit uncomfortable when he sensed the breath of this young Azura devil, because until now, he never felt such a formidable breath from an Azura, and even the Azura devil of Xiantian 8th stage, with whom Yi Shiwen had to struggle a bit, few days ago, was not a match for this young Azura. This young Azura devil's cultivation was not very high, but his strength was certainly very high, and even if he had not yet entered into the Xiantian 9th stage, but perhaps was also not far away from attaining it. Fallen, the Azura have really fallen. Yi Mo appeared on the top of Yi Ziwen's shoulder and said, although Azura race and Great Azura race are quite similar, but the two sides never allowed interracial marriages since the ancient times. Azura are considered as ordinary civilians, but the Great Azura are actually counted among the nobility in the devil world. The rules of Azura clans strictly prohibit interracial marriages between members of Azura clan and Great Azura clan, and there has been no example of such for thousands of years, but who would have thought that one would actually appear here? You mean he is a hybrid? Yi Shiwen said. Yes, the Azura blood seems to run quite strongly in his body. He should be second generation of hybrid Azura race. Emo said, it is quite impossible for most Azura devils to possess Nobliki, and that's why they have been slaves of great Azura clan for generations after generations. Also, a great Azura devil child is already in the truth realm from birth. However, that is not the case with the hybrids of the two races, so it's good news for you that this young Azura is not a genuine great Azura, otherwise, you will die miserably. Human, I am paying attention to you for a long time. That young Azura said he couldn't sense the presence of Emo, because if Emo desired, then only Yi Shiwen could see it while others couldn't. The young Azura devil grasped his hand and grabbed a stick from the void. This stick's whole body was black in color and was actually the legendary Azura stick. Generally, Azura devils used their own bodies as weapons, but there were also others who did not like to use their own bodies as weapons and preferred to use Azura stick, which was a giant mighty weapon, and once brandished, it could cause the heavens to fall and ground to rend. You insolent human, actually dared to strike the people of this young lord's territory. Today you will have to wash away your sins with your own blood. The young Azura devil said in a loud voice. I see that you are a strong master, so if you commit suicide, then I'll leave your entire corpse intact and won't feed it to those lowly demon beasts. You think you are capable enough to force me to commit suicide? A smile appeared on Yi Zaiwen's face. You are just a hybrid. In his previous life, interracial breeding was very popular on Earth, but that was not the case here, because in Zhenwu Jie, the act of interracial breeding and giving birth to hybrids often meant tragedy. The general thought process in this world didn't accept it, because according to the people of this world, pure blood meant more strength and purity. Human, you are courting death. I will extract your spirit and bake it in fire till you are frightened out of your wits. The young Azura devil finally could not maintain his calm because Yi Shiwen had poked his sore spot. Right after hearing the words of Yi Shiwen, immediately, a fierce and grim look appeared on his face and he shouted crazily. He would never be able to forget the pain of being a hybrid, and because this stain will forever stay on his existence, although thanks to being a hybrid he received more strength compared to other Azura devils, but at the same time his strength was far worse than the genuine great Azura clan. In fact, his current strength was even less than the newborn babies of great Azura clan, and this inferiority complex had deeply rooted itself in his heart, causing him to possess very low self-esteem. The young Azura obviously hated Yi Shiwen from the depth of his heart, otherwise he would never have said such words, because torturing the opposite party was several folds worse and brutal compared to killing them. He would not talk about torturing Yi Shiwen if he didn't bear a bitter hatred for him. You humans are really nasty and hateful. You actually treat our Azura clan as test subjects in this small dimension, and do you think that our Azura clan doesn't know how to fight back? My father has already taken command of the Azura clan, and under his leadership, we will completely annihilate you abominable human beings. We have also united the other devil clans, and together, we will defeat you humans and make this small world dominate your world. The young Azura sneered again and again, but first, I'll kill you and gain merit. After that, I will command a side army in the future. Although the founder of Iyuan School had captured Masha territory, but he had not destroyed the devils still living in this small world. Rather, he decided to use these devils as test subjects to give battle experience to his disciples. However, since then, the devil race of this small world had constantly tried to counterattack on Zhenwu Jie, while using Iyuan School as a springboard to dominate the whole world. Even though you are nothing but a waste, your courage is quite impressive. Yi Shiwen said, but you must know that you have been held captives in this small world by the founder of our Yuan School. In order to give experience to the disciples of Yuan School, you are no different than a pig, ready to be slaughtered anytime, but you still want to counterattack? You are really courting death. It's you who is courting death. The young Azura devil suddenly got furious, because Yi Zaiwen's attitude suddenly and thoroughly angered him. The black giant stick danced in his hand, while the entire space began to fluctuate, producing a wild and loud shrieking sound. This Azura stick was also called Morning Staff, and according to the rumors, under the 9 layers of Netherland, there was Fengdu Hell, and after a human died, his soul entered the hell to face the trial for his sins. while the messengers of legendary hell used morning staff to punish them. It was said that the so-called Azura stick was actually an imitation of morning staff itself, though the source of this rumor was quite remote in the past. When Yi Mo had described about Azura race to Yi Shiwen, it had also mentioned about this horrifying legend to him. The legend of hell was same in all worlds, maybe some hearsays were slightly different, but roughly the same. In Yi Ziwen's previous life on the earth, he had also heard about the legendary hell on earth, and even in Zhenwu Jie, there was also a legend of hell. However, the legends would always be legends, no one knew whether the legendary hell actually existed or not. After all, even the formidable emperor-ranked figures could not reverse death to come back and confirm the existence of the legendary hell. According to what Yi Mo informed Yi Shiwen, throughout the entire heaven and earth, the god was responsible for governing the world of the living, and Yama, king of hell, was in charge of governing the world of the dead. However, this was just a hearsay that seemed to have spread countless years ago, and even after so many years had already passed, it still seemed to spread. Even the previous master of Yi Mo was never able to confirm the existence of the legendary hell. He had rummaged through numerous books and shuttled back and forth through many worlds, but still couldn't discover the existence of hell, as if it existed only in legends. When Yi Shiwen heard about this, he almost felt intimidated from this previous master of Yi Mo. The legendary Devil King was definitely a madman. He actually wanted to lead an expedition from Devil World to the legendary hell, in order to include hell under the control of Devil World. This Devil King was absolutely a lunatic. He was confident of his own strength to the point of thinking that he was invincible, and actually led an expedition to 10,000 worlds, because rather than being the sovereign king of Devil World, he wanted to become the ruler of 10,000 worlds, in order to become the most distinguished in under the sun. Regarding the Azura stick of Azura clan, it was said that many years ago, the founder of Azura clan once fought with a supreme master in hell, and the battle was disastrous. And after the battle was over, the founder of Azura clan used the other party's morning staff as a basis to create an Azura stick and made it more suitable for Azura clan. This Azura stick was the only kind of weapon used by Azura clan, who were famous for using their invincible bodies as weapons. According to Yi Mo, when the Azura Devil King fought with that supreme master, he suffered a loss just because he was using his own great Azura body as weapon, so he decided to imitate the morning staff and created an Azura stick. Although it was only an imitation, but these things happened so long ago that no one could guess their origin, and except Yi Mo, an old monster-type extraordinary character, no one knew about this secret. To the present, even the devils of Azura race thought that Azura stick was actually an invention of their own ancestors and had been passed down to them generation after generation. Under the influence of Azura stick, suddenly, the world changed its color, and also produced a shrieking and wild howling sound, which seemed very sad and shrill, enough to scare a timid person to death. Azura stick was struck horizontally and instantly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen, and it seemed as if it would pound on his head and burst his brains. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that Yi Shiwen actually felt as if his own body was being suppressed, and it was like his soul was being sucked out of his. The morning staff was used by the messengers of hell themselves, and its functions were to call the soul of deceased and manage these souls in hell. Even the great Azura Devil King was unable to escape from the frightening effects of morning staff, while Azura stick was an imitation of morning staff itself, so it naturally had the properties of morning staff. Chapter 145, Successive Breakthroughs. At that moment, Yi Shiwen had a feeling that his soul was being sucked out of his body, which completely left him in a trace-like state, but in a flash, Azura stick suddenly arrived in front of him, and if it was plugged directly into his head, then his brains would definitely burst out. The strength of a master at the peak Xiantian 8 stage completely released out and created ripples in the space. Then, suddenly, the intermittent waves of fluctuating blood-red light instantly released out of the Tianyuan mirror inside the body of Yi Shiwen. The might of these scarlet fluctuating light waves was just like that of an emperor, which immediately made that young Azura devil to have an impulse to prostrate on the ground, and this feeling deeply immersed in its bones, a feeling to prostrate in front of the ruler of 10,000 worlds, making him realize that he was actually a slave, looking at its master, and this feeling caused an unusual discomfort in his heart. The young Azura devil actually hesitated for a moment. After all, he was of noble descent of Azura clan, one of 8 royal clans of Devil World. Then how could he have such a humiliating feeling of being a slave? And this feeling had also permeated deep in his bone marrow. He was confused, just what was happening to him. Taking advantage of this time, Yi Shiwen recovered and instantly pulled out a long blade, then fiercely chopped out towards the young Azura. Boom! A terrifying blast wave instantly spread and engulfed the surrounding area, while at this time, Yi Shiwen continually retreated a few steps. A cruel expression appeared on the face of that Azura as he took advantage of this opportunity to attack Yi Shiwen. Stop, you lowly hybrid Azura. Don't tell me you actually think of attacking the great Devil King and ruler of 10,000 worlds? And this time, Yi-Mo suddenly appeared and shouted loudly, which immediately shook the spirit of that Azura devil and forced him to kneel down on the ground, because he felt that he was not eligible to stand in front of such a great figure. Taking advantage of the pause of that Azura devil, Yi Shiwen regrouped the Zhen Yuan to prepare for his next attack, and once again chopped out a terrifying blade light towards the Azura devil. The blade light severely struck into the huge body of the Azura devil, and since his body was also pressed down by the blood-red light, so he did not have the means to display his full strength. This made him confused and abnormally aggrieved, because looking at his own strength, he knew that he possessed strength close to the masters of Xiantian 9th stage, but now, he could only display the strength of below Xiantian 7th stage, and this was all because of this damn human. This was actually a spiritual shackle, a very horrifying spiritual coercion. He had heard about some of the mythical figures in the legends of his clan, and this coercion could be achieved by anyone regardless of the race, which was quite bizarre because it required for the person to achieve a certain level, and he was just unable to think that a human was able to reach this level and was also using spiritual shackle on him. So now, the young Azura knew perfectly well that this human was very frightening and relying just on his own strength. He did not stand a chance against him. The young Azura devil tried his best to resist, but in a flash, the terrifying peerless might ruptured in his body. Pooh! The young Azura suddenly spouted a mouthful of blood and then suddenly rushed all the way back to escape from the attacks of Yi Shiwen. Hidden dragon rises from the abyss. Immediately, Yi Shiwen shot his palm and a coiling dragon instantly congealed, roared loudly, and the whole atmosphere slightly changed under the imposing noble aura of this dragon, while its long body disappeared into a streamer and instantly rushed towards the young Azura devil. Smack! The young Azura firmly kept his one foot on the ground and stood firmly while his Azura stick was instantly knocked down. Boom! The entire space vibrated and intense energy shock waves instantly spread in the surrounding area. The huge body of Azura devil instantly flew upside down and he spouted mouthful of blood. He was cursing this human in his heart and was very much aggrieved. After all, he was obviously much stronger than this human but was still completely suppressed by him to death. This feeling really made him quite depressed. He was at the peak of Xiantian 8th stage and was only a small step away from entering into the Xiantian 9th stage, and after that, he could become a major Azura existence, but he was still unable to defeat a mere human. He just couldn't accept this. The young Azura devil was very unwilling, but Yi Shiwen's offensives continued to rumble in his body and he almost could not resist this time, because his body was suppressed by a terrifying coercion and he could hardly resist. It seemed like today he encountered his natural predator. It was just like meeting his life's owner. At last, he could no longer resist and was directly split in half by Yi Zaiwen's long blade, and the Jingqi continuously transferred from his whole body into the body of Yi Shiwen, and at this point, Yi Shiwen felt that his own inner state barrier had finally begun to loosen up. Yi Shiwen sat on the ground and began to prepare for a breakthrough. This was going to be a very important breakthrough for him. The Jingqi of a master at the peak of Xiantian 8th stage was very huge and was also enough to support Yi Shiwen in having a complete breakthrough. At this time, above Yi Zaiwen's head, the Tianyuan mirror started spinning around and the blood-red light released from its surface formed a red curtain of light around Yi Zaiwen's body in order to protect him while he was having the breakthrough. Yi Shiwen felt that the Zhenyuan began to roll and boil up within his body, and the enormous strength of these forces, boiling up inside his body, caused his hair to fly upwards, while his own vitality surged up along with his inner strength. Only in a moment, his breath instantly had a breakthrough, and under the driving force of Zhenyuan, the inner realm of Yi Ziwen's cultivation finally collapsed, and he finally stepped from Xiantian 4th stage straight into the Xiantian 5th stage. However, there was not the slightest sign of exhaustion of Jingqi in Yi Ziwen's body. The Jingqi of a master at the peak of Xiantian 8th stage was very large in amount and truly vigorous, and it not only helped him in having a breakthrough from Xiantian 4th stage to 5th stage, it also continued to push him towards the peak of the Xiantian 5th stage. Under the nourishment of this massive Jingqi, soon, Yi Shiwen successfully and smoothly reached the peak of Xiantian 5th stage. But, after breaking through to the peak of Xiantian 5th stage, Yi Shiwen did not stop and immediately took out a He Dan and swallowed it down. The essence of He Dan surged out from the drug and started flowing into his limbs and bones, allowing his inner realm, which seemed to have consolidated a moment ago, to have signs of yet another breakthrough. As far as the biggest obstacle between Xiantian 5th stage and Xiantian 6th stage was concerned, it was actually the conversion phase of Zhenqi into Zhenyuan, but Yi Shiwen had already cleared this phase by completely transforming Zhenyuan in his body, so for him, this stage was simply not an obstacle anymore. By relying on the promotive effects of He Dan, Yi Shiwen once again had a breakthrough and directly stepped into the Xiantian 6th stage. Boom! An incredible imposing aura erupted from his body and he opened his eyes all of a sudden. Chapter 146, Xiantian 7th Peak. Yi Ziwen's imposing aura rose dramatically and his cultivation level soared at terrifying speed and rushed all the way to the Xiantian 6th stage, but Yi Shiwen did not stop and immediately took out a bright red fruit from his storage ring. It was the Blood Yuan fruit. This is a pretty good thing, but it is best to wait and use it when you break through from the Xiantian 8th stage to the Xiantian 9th stage. It will save you a considerably large amount of painstaking effort at that time. Guillemot said, "It's a pity that you are taking it now. I know that its effects would certainly be biggest if I take it at the time of breaking from Xiantian 8th stage, but I cannot wait for that time, because Luo Yifan's lackeys are certainly looking for my whereabouts, and although this Masha territory is quite big, but they will find me sooner or later." Yi Shiwen said, "Before they find me, I must enhance my strength to such a state that I can protect myself." At present, when Yi Ziwen's cultivation broke through to enter into the Xiantian 5th stage, and later to the Xiantian 6th stage, his fighting strength also skyrocketed to a great extent. Initially, he was able to easily defeat the masters of Xiantian 6th stage and could contend with ordinary masters of Xiantian 7th stage, but now, after successive breakthroughs, his fighting strength had definitely become comparable to a master of Xiantian 9th stage. However, this was not enough, because this time, in addition to inner seed disciples, even the seeds among the core disciples had come to Masha territory. And almost all of these seed core disciples were already in the Xiantian Great Realm, and even the weakest among them was at the peak of Xiantian 9th stage. Although all of these seed core disciples might not be hostile to Yi Shiwen, but as long as there was even one or two for Yi Shiwen, that would be fatal. At his current cultivation, he could at most compete with the ordinary master of Xiantian 9th stage, but he still wasn't a match for the masters at the peak of Xiantian 9th stage and Xiantian Great Realm, and while facing them, it would only be a dead end for him. Yi Shiwen must enhance his cultivation level once again and step into the next stage. After consuming Blood Yuan fruit, his fighting strength would increase once again to a new level, enough to sweep away even the core disciples of Xiantian Great Realm. At that time, if Luo Yifan personally didn't come into action, then no one else would be Yi Ziwen's opponent, and then he would only need to avoid just one person, Luo Yifan, because as far as other people were concerned, he certainly didn't care, and it would naturally be simple to escape from just one man. Indeed. Yi Mo nodded and was very much satisfied in his heart from the decisive attitude of Yi Shiwen. A lot of people would have stayed confused and stuck, unable to choose between long-term interests and immediate interests, as this was really a difficult choice and could have blinded them, making them unable to make the right decision. However, if thought with calm mind, if they were dead then there would be no future left to fulfill the long-term interests. The truth was so simple, but not many people could have reached such a decision, and so quickly, like Yi Shiwen. This time, I must make that Luo Yifan understand the pain of losing his dear ones. Yi Shiwen smiled in a strange manner. This time, during the seed disciple competition, inner disciples failed to pose a threat to Yi Shiwen, and now, Yi Shiwen was the chief inner seed disciples himself, and Luo Yifan obviously knew about this, so he should have chosen core disciples to do the job, and not just ordinary core disciples. The ones who came to Masha territory were elites among the elites. Almost all of them were in the Xiantian Great Realm. Some core disciples were at Xiantian 9th peak, but their strength was also almost comparable to that of the core disciples of Xiantian Great Realm. The masters of this level could set foot in the truth realm at any time, and the ambitious ones would want to create their own factions, which would ultimately go down in the history, or even compete for the leading position in the sect. Unless they had already joined someone else's faction a long time ago, or else at this level, very few would go to join someone else's faction, because at this level of strength, even on their own, they could easily create a strong enough faction in a Yuan school. Then why would they become lackeys of someone else? Expecting various theories in the comments section, tongue sticking out. Therefore, Luo Yifan should have worked hard and put a lot of effort and energy in cultivating these seed-level core disciples, as they were not the same as those inner disciples, because if the case of inner disciples was considered, on the ranking list of inner seed disciples, almost every year, a large number of inner disciples would step into the Xiantian 6th stage, thereby departing from this list. But when the ranking list of core disciples was taken into consideration, it would take several years for someone to leave that list, because for many people, it could be said that promotion from the Xiantian 5th stage to Xiantian 6th stage was comparatively simple, especially when compared to the promotion from Xiantian Great Realm to the Truth Realm, and this was just because the breakthrough to the Truth Realm was not a simple matter, which was obvious from the fact that there were more than 100 seed core disciples, and not even one was able to enter into the Truth Realm in the past 3 or 4 years, and since no one was going up and it was natural that nobody had left this list, so it was also normal if this list did not change for several years. In fact, it happened before when the list didn't change for over a decade because no one was able to break into the Truth Realm, and this was the reason why the list generally changed only when these seed core disciples got older and eventually had to leave the sect, because, after reaching the age of 150 years, their blood began to decline, their strengths also declined, and some people were often kicked outside the seed core disciples rankings list, while others would take the initiative to leave on their own accord. Then they would go and become elders or ancestors of the subschools. However, their decision was understandable, because after reaching the age of more than 150 years, it was very difficult to have a breakthrough and enter into the Truth Realm, and some of them also realized that they didn't have the talent to achieve the Truth Realm, so it was pointless to stay in the sect. So, if Yi Shiwen killed several core disciple subordinates of Luo Yifan, then that would completely cut off Luo Yifan's influence, which was enough to make him feel the pain of losing dear ones. Yi Shiwen immediately started eating the blood yuan fruit, and after taking full dose of bright red blood yuan fruit, the essence of the fruit quickly turned into a heat flow and started circulating throughout his body. His inner realm, that had already consolidated a moment ago at the Xiantian 6th stage, began to loosen up again, and compared to He Dan, the efficacy of blood yuan fruit was much more overbearing, and it instantly filled his entire body with intense heat. His complexion started to turn red, and if someone looked at him from afar, he would simply look like a blood-red person. Without the slightest hesitation, Yi Shiwen quickly mobilized Jin Yuan in his body and began to hastily digest and assimilate the essence of blood yuan fruit within his body. The efficacy of the fruit started melting and assimilating in his body, while Yi Shiwen also started practicing tyrant body technique as he was crazily absorbing this efficacy in his body. An intermittent burst of crackling sounds transmitted from his body, just like the firecrackers show on a new year. As his body continued to absorb the drug, it also started to transform simultaneously. The spirit stones also began to frantically burn inside his storage ring, while inside the mysterious space in his mind, the Deshang realm of second layer of Tyrant's Body Technique had already started to revolve frantically, and the third layer finally began to take shape and revealed its complete appearance to Yi Shiwen. A total of 1,000 spirit stones were burned at a crazily fast speed. Only Yi Shiwen was capable of crazily burning so many spirit stones at such a fast speed. And when such a large number of spirit stones were burned, Yi Shiwen was able to completely estimate the third layer of Tyrant Body Technique, and by taking advantage of spirit stones and strength of blood yuan fruit, he also managed to have a breakthrough to the third layer of Tyrant Body Technique. Yi Ziwen's imposing aura continued to break through from Xiantian 6th stage to intermediate Xiantian 6th stage, then from intermediate Xiantian 6th stage to late Xiantian 6th stage, Xiantian 6th peak, Xiantian 7th stage, intermediate Xiantian 7th stage, late Xiantian 7th stage, and finally to Xiantian 7th peak. Yi Ziwen's cultivation madly rushed all the way to the peak of Xiantian 7th stage, then finally stopped. He was also able to gain the highest level of knowledge about the third layer of Tyrant Body Technique, just like he had achieved the highest knowledge of Divine Dragon Flings Its Tail, which also increased his might far more than before. Yi Shiwen had Tianyuan Mirror to cover up all the fluctuations of his breath, otherwise such big movements accompanied with his breakthroughs would have attracted many devils, but now that he had Tianyuan Mirror, he simply was not afraid because Tianyuan Mirror was the nemesis of those devils, and even when facing truth-level devils, as long as it was not a peerless devil like that great devil leader who had fought with Qi Fifan, using the restraining effect of Tianyuan Mirror on the devils, even if it was a truth-level devil, Yi Shiwen was confident to take them on. And as far as other devils below truth level were considered, he simply didn't consider them as his opponents. After reaching the peak of Xiantian 7th peak, his fighting strength simply skyrocketed, and now, even masters of Xiantian Great Realm were not his match anymore. "Let's go!" Yi Shiwen got up and said. He stayed in this place for a whole day and night, but this time, the breakthrough didn't take too long thanks to Blood Yuan Fruit and He Dan. Yi Shiwen used Celestial Step and rushed towards the depths of Masha territory, and it seemed as if he was taking a stroll in a relaxed manner. However, his form flickered, and in the short time, he simply vanished in the line of sight. Far away, an army of over 1,000 great devils, under the leadership of a formidable great devil, was advancing towards a team of several disciples of Yuan school. Their loud battle cries could be heard from far away, and sand was billowing from their advancement, while their loud roars were heart-shaking. Great Devil Army. Above a mountain peak, Yi Shiwen used his torch-like vision and saw that this army was actually composed of great devils, and each of them were at least at Xiantian 5th stage and above, which was extremely frightening. Perhaps, except the royal blood guards of Great Yu State's royal clan, no other army could last in front of this great devil army. This is the first time that Yi Shiwen had seen a regular army of devils, because the cases were entirely different in Masha territory and Huanma territory. Earlier, in the Huanma territory, the Huanma devils had been caught and locked up inside by the founder of a Yuan school, so they never really had their own heritage, so they couldn't be compared with the devils of Masha territory. This regular army was simply a nightmare for the idle warriors who weren't experienced in army battles. The existence of this army explained that there was a possibility of a kingdom of devil race in the depths of Masha territory, perhaps also more than one. So earlier, what that young Azura said about this place being his territory was true, then there should be a kingdom of Azura clan. This great devil army was different from that flagitious great devil that Yi Shiwen had beheaded earlier, although they seemed equally flagitious and brutal, but a lot more disciplined and experienced, and it was obvious that this great devil army had been drilled for a long time and possessed huge battle experience. Yi Shiwen looked again and saw a slender figure that seemed exceptionally familiar among the besieged disciples of Yuan school. It was Hua Menghan. Chapter 147. Rescue indeed, it was really Hua Menghan. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes because he did not expect to see Hua Menghan, and he quickly realized that Hua Menghan actually turned out to be a seed-level core disciple. No wonder she had so much face and was able to mediate between Qianyu faction and senior factions by sending Jing Yannan. These days, one thing after another came up and Yi Shiwen didn't have time to express his gratitude to her, but now, he unexpectedly met her here, in Masha territory. Besides Hua Menghan, Yi Shiwen also saw a few familiar people whom he had already met before, and they were none other than Hu Yanghang and Jing Yannan. It was not a surprise that they were also seed-level core disciples, and in addition to the two of them, there was a beautiful girl, who appeared to be of same age as Hua Menghan, in a bright long skirt. Her posture was swaying as the sword was dancing in her hand, and each time her sword moved, a great devil was beheaded. There was also a grandiose man among them. His broadsword was dancing and giving rise to fierce winds, and these devils simply had no way to come close to his body. At this time, although they had been besieged by the great devil army, but the situation was not really too dangerous. After all these 5 masters were considered elites among the elites, and each one of them possessed outstanding strength, far more than the core disciples at the same cultivation level, not to mention, even if these great devils were flagitious and incomparably brutal, and possessed high cultivation levels, but they were still considered as cannon fodder level existence. In the devil race, and very few of them had practiced power techniques, and many of which were crude techniques, so it was certain that they were not the opponents of Hua Menghan and other seed-level core disciples. There was a difference of heaven and earth between the two sides when martial arts practice was taken into consideration. This was the difference between the elites and the masses. However, if the two sides were to fight a prolonged battle, then the strength of Hua Menghan and the others would soon be consumed, because in this situation, the bigger army implied greater might even if the great devils were not elites, because the size of army could be increased but the fighting strength of these elites couldn't be enhanced. However, after the great devil commander joined the battle, Hua Menghan and other core disciples soon fell under the wind. He was obviously stronger than the master of Xiantian Great Realm and should have entered half a step into the truth realm. And just by having the strength equivalent to a master of half-step truth level, this great devil commander was dominating on these 5 core seed disciples who were apparently all in the Xiantian Great Realm. It was obvious that their combined strength was also inferior to the strength of great devil commander, causing them to suddenly fall under the wind. When Yi Shiwen saw the great devil commander, suddenly his blood started to boil up. This great devil commander was a half-step truth level existence, and looking at Yi Ziwen's current strength, great devil commander was truly his opponent, because right now, although Yi Shiwen was at the peak of Xiantian 7th stage, but his fighting strength was equivalent to a master of half-step truth realm, which was far more than the strength of Xiantian Great Realm masters. In short, this great devil commander was the best opponent for him. This great devil commander should prove the best opponent at my current strength. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and said, "Wait here and control the Tianyuan mirror. Do not let it release its restraining powers. I want to test my true strength." If Tianyuan mirror released its suppression, then perhaps, the great devil commander would quickly die at the hands of Yi Shiwen. And right now, this wasn't Yi Ziwen's main goal. No problem. Diamo said. Although he would often help Yi Shiwen in suppressing those devils so Yi Shiwen could easily behead them, but that was only a means to help in his fast growth. Everybody, withstand for a little longer. I have sent a distress signal, and soon, someone should come to our rescue. Jing Yannan exclaimed to raise the morale of other 5 disciples, but they were fighting silently, because they were elites and understood to keep their minds calm and focused. Especially, Hua Menghan and the grandiose man with broadsword were collaborating to fight the great devil commander, but they were feeling enormous pressure and horrifying strength of a half-step true master, and it could be said that to a certain extent, he already possessed some of the strength of a truth-level master. Even if 2 people were together fighting with him, they weren't the slightest relaxed. It was obvious that great devil commander was more familiar with the art of war, and at this time, this was also making them feel distressed and powerless in front of him. Then, suddenly, a long and loud howling sound came from far away, and it gradually came closer and closer. Moreover, it was so fast that in a blink of an eye, it arrived at the scene, and one could guess the insane speed of the approaching person just from hearing the howling sound, which was simply like the lightning that arrived in the vicinity in a flash. Suddenly, a flash instantly crashed into the Great Devil Army, and even this drilled and experienced Great Devil Army was simply not the match of this blade light, which simply pierced through them, collapsing one after another, and the weak Great Devils that came in the range of this attack instantly died or got severely wounded. "Who is that?" Great Devil Commander suddenly roared, then immediately stopped fighting with Hua Menghan and the Grandiose Man, because in his heart, these humans did not pose a threat to him, and under his army's encirclement, these damn lowly humans would eventually have to die. The blade light crossed through the Great Devil Army and immediately and fiercely rushed toward the Great Devil Commander. Boom! A huge explosion occurred and a mushroom cloud appeared on the spot. This was now the battle between two half-step true masters, although they only possessed a part of the total strength of a true master, but masters of Xiantian Great Realm weren't capable of producing such an atomic bomb-like explosion, and it was simply impossible for masters of Xiantian Ninth Peak. The flash of light dissipated and revealed the silhouette of a figure. When Hua Menghan saw this figure, a surprised look immediately appeared on her face, because that person was none other than Yi Shiwen. She never thought that in such a short amount of time, Yi Shiwen would actually become so formidable. She remembered that the first time she saw him, he was just at the Hotian realm, and at that time, she felt grateful to him for saving her life, but she thought that it would end at this. After all, he was only a Hotian realm warrior, and even if he managed to step into the Xiantian realm in the future, it was still most unlikely that they would ever intersect each other's path in this lifetime. However, all of this changed in less than 1 year, when Yi Zaiwen's strength had a rapid development, and when she saw him again, he was already a master of the Xiantian realm and was also considered the leader of younger generation of his sub-school, and later, he also became the leader of new disciples. The second time, she heard about him when Qianyu faction was in trouble, and at that time, she used her influence to buy some time for Qianyu faction, but she did not hold any hope for them to win. She just wanted to do something to help Yi Shiwen, but not on a grand scale, otherwise it could lead to him becoming an eyesore in the eyes of a lot of people. But she did not expect that he would actually win the battle against Mo Han and lead to the smooth establishment of Qianyu faction, but she again received news about Yi Shiwen becoming the chief inner seed disciple. Moreover, this time, it was a recognition that could not be questioned or argued upon by anyone. Although now he was merely the chief inner seed disciple, but in a major sect like Yuan school, becoming a chief was like a seat of honor, because even if he was only the chief of inner disciples, but this status could only be obtained by 1 in a million disciples and required both talent and formidable strength. This should be the third time she saw Yi Shiwen, but now he was no longer that skinny teenager whom she met the first time, and had actually grown up into a fine youth. The youth who once saved her life had just now rushed straight into the Great Devil Army, and not just that, he went straight for the Great Devil Commander, an existence that she and other masters couldn't take on together. This rapid transformation was simply unbelievable. The one who was more baffled than Hua Menghan was actually Hu Yangheng. He certainly remembered Yi Shiwen, but in his memory, Yi Shiwen was simply nothing and could only be regarded as a little guy, a nasty bug, and for him, so long as he wanted, crushing a petty bug like Yi Shiwen was very convenient, but now, he couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that a bug like Yi Shiwen had actually grown so formidable. Immediately, a strong killing intent boiled up in his heart. An astonished look appeared on the face of Jing Yannan when he looked at the formidable figure of Yi Shiwen. In such a short time, the young boy, who, at that time, had especially come forward to greet him, actually turned into such a fierce master? He was now sure that he was not wrong about Yi Zaiwen's future growth. Dark green clothes, that long blade and a proud demeanor. In the end, just what kind of experience did he go through that caused his cultivation to increase to such outrageous proportions? Everyone was astonished at the sudden arrival of Yi Shiwen, but he didn't care and directly engaged in fighting with the Great Devil Commander. Damn you, you lowly human, you dare to treat out Great Devil race as hunting objects, you are courting death. The Great Devil Commander shouted in an angry voice, and his words seemed like they were thundering again and again, while an endless amount of mochi emerged out of the giant spear in his hands and instantly filled the entire surrounding space. Devil sweeps the universe. The endless amount of mochi transformed into countless spears made up of spurki, and seemed like hiding the sky and covering the earth, and swept straight towards Yi Shiwen. The long blade flashed in the hand of Yi Shiwen and a bright blade light was instantly chopped out, displaying the creative concept of Yi Ziwen's blade skill, and it seemed as if a diagram of a round bright moon was descending and suppressing towards the great devil commander. Suddenly, along with a dazzling glare, Bladiki severely collided with the several spears, and energy waves spread in all directions like mighty ocean waves and completely swept away some of the great devil soldiers. In the frenzy of raging energy waves, these great devils simply turned into flying ashes. At that moment, standing in front of Yi Shiwen, the great devil commander felt a strange feeling from Yi Ziwen's body, which suddenly increased his palpitations, although this feeling was very mild, but it made him feel very unpleasant, as if he was standing in front of Sovereign King. However, at this time, he had no time to think about why was he getting such a feeling and suddenly shouted, "Damn human, go to hell!" Devil splits the vast sky. The giant spear danced in his hands and a terrifying spurki spread in the sky, and it seemed as if it was completely splitting the atmosphere, and this sight was quite overwhelming. Chapter 148, Great Devil Commander Beheaded. Devil splits the vast sky. The giant spear danced in his hands and a terrifying spurki spread in the sky, and it seemed as if it was completely splitting the atmosphere and blotting the sky. This sight was quite overwhelming. This spurki was incomparably terrifying and produced a sharp piercing sound, as if all other sounds had completely vanished from the atmosphere, leaving only the dreadful sound of spears rushing through the sky. Full Moon Beheader. Yi Shiwen shouted, and suddenly his appearance looked like the lightning itself, and using just his arm, he instantly chopped out Bladiki, which instantly turned into a diagram of a full moon and pressed down from above just like the Mount Tai. The layer upon layer of terrifying spurki rushed penetrating through the space and instantly stabbed into the diagram of full moon. The full moon suddenly exuded endless amount of moonlight and immediately flushed into the spurki, which was completely obliterated by the enormous might of bright moonlight. This was no moonlight, it was actually Yi Ziwen's frightening Bladiki. He had managed to move one step further and integrated the creative concept with his Bladiki, and as far as his opponents were concerned, this attack was simply like a road roller-like existence. Compared with Yi Ziwen's former pure creative concept, the might of this attack was simple, unimaginable, and it was hard to determine how much stronger it had actually become. After completely obliterating the spurki, Yi Shiwen did not stop and took out his long blade and instantly chopped out a terrifying Bladiki. The Bladiki instantly rushed towards the great devil commander, and it seemed as if it was tearing the sky of Masha territory and would split him into two halves any moment. "Lowly human!" the great devil commander shouted, and his voice resounded like a loud explosion, and giant spear in the hands instantly sketched the outline of devilish sun in the void, which then released dark and horrifying rays of light towards the Bladiki of Yi Shiwen. Boom! Layer upon layer of shock waves swept across in all directions when the spear attack clashed maliciously against the blade attack of Yi Shiwen. Bang! 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 Both of them felt a wave of horrifyingly massive strength from the clash of their attacks and withdrew several steps back, leaving deep footprints on the ground. On the side of Yi Shiwen, when a group of great devils saw that Yi Shiwen had been repulsed, they thought to take advantage of this opportunity and immediately advanced towards him while shrieking strangely, as if to rip him to shreds. Yi Shiwen waved the long blade and a huge blade light swept out which rushed towards several great devils and instantly chopped them into two halves, while some of them instantly turned into minced meat. Abominable human! When Great Devil Commander saw that several of his devil men were instantly killed by Yi Shiwen, he suddenly roared out of anger and frustration. This was a deadly duel, not just between two masters, but between two sides, because the outcome of this duel affected the situation of both sides. After all, the survival of the team of Yi Yuan School's seed core disciples or the Great Devil Army depended on this duel. One was the commander of Great Devil Army, and his cultivation level was at the half-step truth level, which was almost equivalent to that of true masters. The other one was a fortuitous master, looking for adventure, but his fighting strength was also comparable to that of the masters of half-step truth realm. The collision between the two sides was destined to cause the heaven to fall and earth to shatter. The giant spear violently danced in the hands of Great Devil Commander and produced sad and shrill howling sound, like the frightening shrieks and pitiful screams of devils. These pitiful screams belonged to the dead and were quite terrifying, filled with the lingering resentments of dead, and these resentments were attached at the tip of the spear, and as a result of this, the might of the spear didn't decrease. On the contrary, because of these screams and curses of the dead, the overall might of the spear increased by multiple folds and made it very formidable. The existence of Spurky produced round after round of roaring sounds, and it seemed as if the whole world had suddenly changed. The sound of intermittent crying and pitiful screaming had spread everywhere. It was like the whole world was falling into the hell, which was truly terrifying. At this moment, his spear technique seemed to have reached a high degree of proficiency, close to perfection, indicating that Great Devil Commander had practiced an authentic Modeo-based power technique. Yi Shiwen wasn't the slightest scared of this and maliciously chopped out an unstoppable blade light. In this battle, it could be said that Yi Shiwen was completely unleashing his true strength and enjoying the battle to his heart's content. Each and every collision was setting off boundless shock waves in the air, along with intermittent screams and cries. It was the Great Devil Commander's spear attack of resentful souls, but was completely annihilated by Yi Shiwen and vanished from this world along with the suffering souls that soon disappeared as well. Each time the two sides clashed, the great devils present in the vicinity would be swept off their feet, but Yi Shiwen simply did not care, because even if more of these devils were dying, it was none of his concern, and even the Great Devil Commander's eyes were blood red and didn't seem to hold back and was fighting with all his might without caring about the lives of his subordinates. Those great devils quickly withdrew far away from these two because the aftermath of their battle was really too terrifying. Once again, the blade and the spear fiercely clashed. Boom! Zhen Yuan was crazily raging within Yi Ziwen's body. Tyrant body technique was also rapidly revolving inside his body and wrapping up a layer of golden light on his skin. When looked from afar, Yi Shiwen looked just like a golden god of war, while the Zhen Yuan had formed a shield and blocking off all the impacts from outside. There was a faint figure of coiling dragon totally entrenched on Yi Ziwen's body and was emitting intense dragon chi, and even with his relentless attacks, the Great Devil Commander was finding it very difficult to break through the protective barrier of coiling dragon on Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had already practiced hidden dragon rises from the abyss move of coiling dragon palm to the acme level and reached its perfection. Moreover, the coiling dragon wrapped on his body was the true nemesis of devils. At a distant place, although great devils had temporarily spread around a little, but Hua Menghan and other disciples had joined forces and were sticking together to protect themselves and were watching the fierce battle going on between Yi Shiwen and the Great Devil Commander, which seemed to have reached a very intense stage. There were astonished looks in their eyes, and all of them were constantly exclaiming while witnessing this insane battle. Hu Yanghang was the only one among them who had a disdained look on his face and was perniciously looking at Yi Shiwen. He was jealous of Yi Shiwen, extremely jealous, to such an extent that it was making him unable to stay calm. In a place where no one else was looking, he pinched a secret technique under his sleeves and secretly sent a message from his summoning talisman, which then instantly departed towards the heaven. Yi Shiwen, I will see how you die. Damn human, today is the day of your death. The Great Devil Commander said in a cold voice, and his voice was so cold and grim, it seemed as if it was emerging out of an ice house. Originally, the Great Devil Commander always kept aloof, but he held an unusual hatred for humankind. Perhaps lower-level devils were not aware of this, but he was well aware of the fact that the situation of the devils living in Masha territory was no different than that of a bunch of pigs, raised by formidable humans to be slaughtered in order to hone the skills of disciples of their sect. This was extremely painful for him. In fact, The thing which was even greater than this pain was actually the great shame that the proud devil race had to bear in Masha territory. If his devil race managed to become strong and their strength exceeded a certain extent, then they would be beheaded by the formidable humans who occasionally came inside Masha territory from time to time for inspection. He was scared that such a fate would ultimately befall him because he was a strong great devil himself. For the devil race of Masha territory, those who managed to become formidable would eventually be killed by formidable humans, and those who were not strong would be beheaded by the disciples of those formidable humans. And this was going to be their fate for generations. No, he would absolutely not allow such a fate to befall him. He would not become a stepping stone for these human disciples. He was an invincible devil. He must transcend this cage, then kill all humans and turn Zhen Wujie into a breeding field for devil race. All these humans were damn. A terrifying mochi flooded out of the entire body of Great Devil Commander. There was Deadki also infused with his mochi, and faint ghostly shadows could clearly be seen condensed with the mochi. The complexion on the face of Great Devil Commander suddenly paled because he condensed a huge amount of his energy in this attack. One could hear the sad and shrill screams coming from the ghostly shadows condensed around the giant spear, and the endless amount of Deadki was sizzling and making noise. It seemed as if it was corroding the air itself. And then, it instantly flew straight towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that a terrifying spear machine was firmly locking on his body, followed by a surge of horrifying pressure which instantly released from the spear and pressured down on him. Yi Shiwen started to madly revolve tyrant body technique inside his body because he knew that this was definitely the last resort of this great devil commander, and as long as he was able to block this move, there would be no way out for the great devil commander. Yi Shiwen was not a recalcitrant. He instantly used Celestial Step and his figure shot forward, while his figure left after images and he instantly vanished, but at this time, he suddenly discovered that the spear was closely following him. Yi Shiwen did not have the chance to dodge, so he immediately clenched his teeth and shouted loudly, "Hidden dragon rises from the abyss." In an instant, endless amount of dragon chi completely surrounded his body, and his entire body suddenly disappeared inside the inexhaustible amount of dragon chi. A gigantic dragon, which was several meters long, immediately took shape and stretched out its claws and directly grasped toward that terrifying spear made up of Deadki. Boom! A terrible explosion occurred, and that terrifying spear was firmly grabbed in the claws of the incarnation of gigantic dragon, while a mutually intense ablation started between Dragon Chi and Deadki, which issued a buzzing sound, and this was an exceptionally fearful sight to witness. The spear filled with Deadki struggled in the grasp of that incarnation of the gigantic dragon, released by Yi Zaiwen's coiling dragon palm technique, and was directly broken into pieces in midair. Broken inch by inch. Poof! The great devil commander screamed pitifully, spouted a mouthful of blood, while his burly stature swayed and slowly fell down on the ground. Devil die! Suddenly, a loud shout came from the sky, and while shaking the entire sky, a terrifying Bladiki instantly descended from the sky, and the great devil commander was instantly split into two halves. At that time, his ability to resist had completely disappeared. After issuing that move, which was obviously his last resort, he had completely exhausted his strength and was directly cleft in two by Yi Shiwen. When Great Devil Commander was killed by Yi Shiwen, the Great Devil Army immediately aligned themselves in a formation and started to retreat while showing excellent discipline. Their retreat was definitely not like the act of escaping mob. Yi Shiwen, Hua Menghan and other disciples did not want to pursue them. After all, the Great Devil Army was not defeated, only their commander was killed. However, Yi Shiwen didn't get time to relax because a loud shout suddenly arrived from far away. Where is Yi Shiwen? Chapter 149, Luo Clan's Dogs. Where is Yi Shiwen? A loud shout came from far away and gradually came nearer, and only in a while, 3 youths who had 25 or 26-year-old appearances arrived on the battlefield. One of them was a female with a radiant face like the moon itself. Another man had a medium build, looked ordinary, but appeared to have a tolerant and steady bearing. The last one looked handsome and was wearing a magnificent robe. The cultivation levels of all three of them were extremely high and could not be underestimated. All of them had almost approached close to entering half a step into the truth realm, whereas the beautiful moon-faced woman was already a master of half-step truth realm, although her cultivation level was not as good as that of Yi Shiwen, but not far off either. After seeing this trio, Hua Menghan's complexion suddenly changed, and a look of unhappiness flashed on her face, especially after seeing the beautiful woman who was standing in the middle of the trio. "Who is Yi Shiwen?" the beautiful woman asked in a cold voice. "Luo's senior sister apprentice, he is Yi Shiwen." From the crowd, Hu Yonghang suddenly stepped up and said while pointing towards Yi Shiwen. This immediately aroused discontented feelings in the hearts of Jing Yannan, Hua Menghan and other core seed disciples. It was Yi Shiwen who saved all of them a moment ago, but at this time, Hu Yonghang didn't think twice before betraying him. They could tell that Hu Yonghang was a typical faker and not at all authentic, but when their gazes were directed towards Yi Shiwen, they knew in their hearts that this guy was really authentic. Now, they could not help but stay away from Hu Yonghang. In their hearts, they secretly decided that it was not worth to maintain a close and long-standing friendship with a guy like Hu Yonghang, because they couldn't trust him anymore, since he turned out to be a guy who might betray them as well. Hu Yonghang did have the slightest idea about other people's suddenly changed perception about him, because right now, the only thing remaining in his heart was envy and hatred for Yi Shiwen. Initially, Yi Ziwen's existence was nothing more than a bug in his eyes, but now, he himself turned into a bug-like figure in front of Yi Shiwen, who actually became so fierce and formidable that he was simply not a match of Yi Shiwen at all. This stark contrast made him feel exceptionally uncomfortable. "You are Yi Shiwen?" Luo's senior sister apprentice looked coldly at Yi Shiwen and lightly said, "I am. Who are you?" Yi Shiwen looked at that Luo's senior sister apprentice and said, while he could clearly see the ill intent in her eyes. Yi Shiwen also looked coldly at Luo's senior sister apprentice. "Yi Shiwen, you have eyes but cannot see Tai," Hu Yonghang said in a complacent and triumphant manner. "Shut up, who do you think you are, daring to teach me?" Yi Shiwen shouted in an angry voice and released sonic waves, which swept out towards Hu Yonghang like mighty ocean waves. The color of Hu Yonghang's face suddenly changed to purple, similar to the color of a pig's liver, and he immediately held his breath. "You are courting death." Hu Yonghang was short of breath and suddenly shouted, but he simply forgot the performance of Yi Shiwen from a while back that had completely left him in a stunned state. His fist blasted and a terrifying Quanjin rushed towards Yi Shiwen and rumbled maliciously. But at this time, Yi Shiwen also moved, his figure suddenly swayed, and at the same time, he also caught the Quanjin in his hand and directly crushed it. In an instant, Yi Shiwen already arrived in front of Hu Yonghang, and using big profound hand, he instantly routed the Zhenyuan present inside the body of Hu Yonghang, then grabbed his neck. Yi Ziwen's palm looked just like an iron hoop when it firmly clutched Hu Yonghang's neck, and he seemed just like a chicken, clutched in the claws of an eagle. Everyone present there suddenly reacted, but then, they realized that Hu Yonghang was already in the grasp of Yi Shiwen. It happened so fast, it was simply like a miracle. No one could even see when it happened, because Hu Yonghang could not even use a single move to resist and was immediately grabbed by Yi Shiwen. Hu Yonghang's neck was in the firm grasp of Yi Shiwen while his whole body was being locked down by Yi Ziwen's formidable Zhenyuan, and due to that, he basically did not have any strength left to even move. His face suddenly flushed with shame, he couldn't breathe properly, he was mad, he just could not accept in his heart, how could Yi Shiwen, an insect-like figure, become so formidable in so less time that he had actually been grabbed in Yi Ziwen's clutches simply like a trash. He hated this, he was anxious to kill Yi Shiwen earlier. If only he had gotten rid of Yi Shiwen earlier, then he would not be in such a situation. "I have not gone to look for you, but you actually dared to come out on your own. You are just a trash who dares to plot against me again and again. Today you will pay the price." Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Stop." Suddenly, Yi Shiwen heard a loud shout of that beautiful woman surnamed Luo, directed at him, while she instantly shot an enormous breath, which locked on Yi Shiwen, and the fluctuations in her martial arts instantly turned intense. Yi Shiwen immediately pulled over Hu Yanghangs to stand in front of him to block the attack. Boom! A terrifying power maliciously rumbled into the body of Hu Yanghang. He screamed pitifully and his body was covered with blood, his bones were broken. But at this instant, Yi Shiwen quickly and secretly shot his palm at the top of his pubic region. Hu Yanghang's martial arts were directly wasted and he immediately fainted and fell on the ground. "How dare you!" that charming woman shouted in an angry voice and viciously stared at Yi Shiwen, while keeping a close eye on him. "You also saw, it was not me who did this," Yi Shiwen readily said in an indifferent tone and threw fainted Hu Yanghang aside. "You," the charming woman glared angrily at him and said, "Luo Fangyi, you sent your brother to kill me. If you have the ability, then try and do it yourself." At this time, Hua Menghan said, "Shut up, you slut. Do you think I cannot kill you? If it was not for giving face to master, you would have already died long ago." Luo Fangyi suddenly shouted, "Luo Fangyi, I am the closing disciple of head. This position is comparable to that of true disciples. You're just a trivial sect disciple. Do you think you can actually dare to defy your superiors?" Hua Menghan suddenly scowled and said in a serious tone, "What did you say?" Luo Fangyi glared at Hua Menghan with an apparent anger flashing in her round eyes. Yi Shiwen finally understood that this woman was the elder sister of Luo Tian, the guy who was trying to kill Hua Menghan that day by poisoning her. Master is considering Luo Tian's death is insufficient. It's a pity that he has not vented his anger on your Luo clan. You are lucky," Hua Menghan said without the slightest yielding in her tone. "Venting anger on my Luo clan just for you? My granduncle is a celestial elder of the Yuan school. My uncle is also an elder, and my brother is a true disciple who will also take over the position of head of our clan in the future. Do you still think you can mess with our Luo clan?" Luo Fangyi shouted in an angry voice. From Luo Fangyi's roaring voice, a general outline of a formidable clan was sketched out, and Yi Shiwen finally came to understand that perhaps the influence of Luo clan was quite strong in Yuan school. Luo Yifan himself was a true disciple. In the future, he might also have the opportunity to compete for the position of sect head, and his uncle was an elder and should obviously be in the truth realm, and more importantly, he had a so-called grand uncle, who was actually a Taishang elder, which was said to be the biggest authority in Yuan school, of course, only after the authority of head and the chiefs of the 9 peaks of Yuan school, in total 10 individuals. But the authority of a Taishang elder was very large, and he could also question the decisions made by sect head as well as chiefs of various peaks. In fact, some heads and chiefs were usually the apprentices of Taishang elders. It could be imagined that Luo clan was another huge influence in Yuan school, and even the sect head could not put his hands on them if there was not enough reason for it. All of these people were illustrious figures in Yuan school and held a major influence. With Luo clan's prominent influence, it was no wonder that Luo Tian was at the Xiantian 3rd stage back then and had actually tried to kill Hua Menghan by poisoning her. It could be guessed that he had nothing to fear because even if he failed, Luo clan would shelter him, and so long as the Taishang elder of Luo clan would come forward, the sect head would have no alternative but to show due respect to him, regardless of how he actually felt. But even after considering all that, he never calculated that he would end up meeting Yi Shiwen and would get beheaded before even getting a chance to properly brag about his own family background. After knowing this, Yi Shiwen felt an increasingly tremendous pressure. So he was not against just one person, Luo Yifan, but it was actually an entire clan having several truth-level masters as its members. However, since it had already begun, then there was nothing to say anymore. "Today, I'm going to block him and keep here. Soon my elder brother will come, and he has said that he would personally kill him." Luo Fangyi sneered and said. Luo Fangyi did not pay attention to Hua Menghan because her cultivation level was inferior compared to her own cultivation level. "Yi Shiwen, hurry up and escape. At your current strength you are not an opponent of Luo Yifan. You have absolutely no chance of winning against him." Yi Mo's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. Yi Shiwen also knew that if Luo Yifan was on the way, then perhaps he would catch up soon, and in that case, he certainly could not stay here any longer. Even though he had achieved the strength comparable to the masters of half-step truth realm, but this strength would be insufficient in front of a true master like Luo Yifan. At his current strength, if he bumped into Luo Yifan, then the consequences could be disastrous, and it was simply a no-brainer that Luo Yifan would kill him on the spot. Yi Shiwen quickly analyzed the actions of the members of Luo clan, which also gave him a general insight about Luo clan. Luo Tian was only a master of Xiantian 3rd stage, but he still tried to kill a closing disciple of the head of a Yuan school. Luo Fangyi attacked Hu Yanghang and he ended up getting crippled, but she did not care at all, and Luo Yifan blatantly interfered during seed disciple competition. Congregating all these facts, one could see the arrogant and overbearing demeanor of Luo clan and also its extraordinary influence in Yuan school. So conclusion could be drawn from this that Luo Yifan would definitely kill him without worrying about anything. Brother Yi, where do you think you are going? Yi Shiwen was about to leave when suddenly, the figure of the mediocre-looking man moved and appeared in front of Yi Shiwen, blocking his way. Who are you? Yi Shiwen asked. Xie Yi. The man lightly said. Get out of the way. Yi Shiwen said. Since Brother Luo is coming, you will have to wait for some time. Xie Yi said in a cold voice. Although he said in a very polite tone, but his words were actually filled with contempt. So, you are a lackey of that Luo. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and said with a killing intention flashing in his eyes. Luo Yifan has raised quite a few loyal dogs. Shut up, how dare you casually say Brother Luo's name like that? The handsome man said, if you had not thoroughly angered Brother Luo, then we would have killed you by now. Who are you? Yi Shiwen asked. Mu Yi. The handsome man replied, since Brother Luo is aiming for your life himself, we will let you live until Brother Luo arrives here. Well, I wonder if Luo Yifan would regret it when he gets to know that 3 of his core disciples died at once. A cold smile appeared on the face of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen suddenly moved, his physique flashed, and in an instant, a burst of terrifying imposing aura spread throughout the sky. Chapter 150, Reparations. After saying that, Yi Shiwen suddenly moved, his physique flashed, and in an instant, a burst of terrifying imposing aura spread throughout the sky. If he wanted to get away, then the only way left for him was to behead all 3 of them as soon as possible. The speed of Yi Shiwen was so fast that none of the people present at the scene could see him clearly. He instantly used Celestial Step, and it could be seen that his movements were already at the Acme level, and perhaps only Luo Fangyi might just be able to slightly track his movements. Yi Shiwen, since you are so eager to die, then we have no choice but to kill you in place of Brother Luo. Mu Yi shouted loudly and immediately moved in order to stop Yi Shiwen and rushed straight towards him, while his terrifying strength of Xiantian Great, which was nearly approaching the strength of half-a-step truth realm, instantly spread out and a huge chi field enveloped Yi Shiwen inside it. Boom! Yi Shiwen shot his palm and the huge chi field instantly exploded, and within the endless frenzy of Zhenyuan after the explosion, Mu Yi could not react, and in a flash, Yi Shiwen had already arrived in front of him. Coiling Dragon Palm. Hidden Dragon rises from the abyss. There was a panic-stricken look in the eyes of Mu Yi, and at this time, Yi Zaiwen's palm turned into dragon claws and maliciously slammed on his chest. Boom! Mu Yi, a master of the Xiantian Great Realm, was directly sent flying, all the bones in his body completely shattered. He spurted out a mouthful of blood mixed with some visceral matter released from his crushing internal organs. With just one palm attack from Yi Shiwen, this extremely arrogant guy was instantly sent flying. Then immediately, Yi Zaiwen's body shuttled forward like an arrow towards Mu Yi and shoved a fierce kick on his body in midair, and his body directly plummeted on the ground. Boom! Yi Zaiwen's kick was not one bit less fierce compared to his palm attack. Half of Mu Yi's body was directly split open by Yi Zaiwen's kick, his internal organs were crushed and his Zhenyuan was completely disrupted. It was now simply impossible for him to live in such a state. Impossible! Xie Yi shouted in disbelief because the strength of Mu Yi and his own strength were almost at the same level. But he just could not believe his eyes when he saw that not just Mu Yi was unable to block Yi Shiwen, he was also so effortlessly killed by Yi Shiwen. Yi Zaiwen's strength was simply unimaginable and super tyrannical. How could this Yi Shiwen be so tyrannical? How dare you kill a disciple of the same sect? You're done for because now, not only you but your entire family must die. Xie yelled. A cold look flashed in the eyes of Yi Shiwen. It was the most unacceptable thing for him when someone threatened his family, because if his family was even touched by anyone, then it would simply invoke the wrath of the Dragon Emperor itself inside of him. In this entire world, Yi Shiwen only held unbreakable bond with his family and could do anything for them, and if someone threatened him using his family, then they would certainly be courting death. Boom! The tyrannical imposing aura of Yi Shiwen scattered in all directions. It seemed as if his whole persona was just like a tornado while intermittent horrifying blast waves were rolling out of his body. In a flash, Yi Zaiwen's stature suddenly ejected straight towards Xie Yi just like an artillery shell. Xie Yi simply could not react and just saw a huge palm coming closer and closer towards his face and instantly went toward his cheek. Bold! Luo Fangyi shouted and pointed her finger towards Yi Shiwen, and it seemed as if the finger-point attack would break the world itself, and accompanied with air explosions while producing a ZZ sound in the air, it instantly arrived near Yi Shiwen. Get lost! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and suddenly, layer upon layer of sound waves proliferated through the atmosphere and blocked the finger-point attack of Luo Fangyi. Luo Fangyi immediately had to withdraw several steps because even if she was a master of the half-step truth realm, but this realm consisted of strong as well as weak masters, and Yi Shiwen was clearly the strongest in the half-step truth realm while Luo Fangyi could only be regarded at the bottom of the half-step truth realm. Luo Fangyi did not have a way to stop Yi Shiwen while his palm continued to get closer and closer to Xie. Smack! A loud sound of slap resounded and Xie Yi's body was instantly sent flying while spinning, and a mouthful of his teeth were also broken by the fierce slap from Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen directly trampled the dantian of Xie Yi and crushed it. After his dantian was destroyed, his body could no longer withstand the gravity and started falling towards the ground in an upside-down state. Yi Zaiwen's long blade chopped out a terrifying bladiki which directly caught up with the flying body of Xie. Pucci! Xie Yi was cleft in two halves in the midair by Yi Zaiwen's bladiki. Jing Yannan looked at Yi Shiwen and could not help but held his breath for a moment. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to be so ruthless that he would mercilessly kill people in rage, but still in a decisive manner without any hesitation. When most people came to know about the true background of a clan like Luo clan, then they would certainly hesitate and even try to sort out enmity and differences, even after knowing that there was no room left to sort out anything, and very few would dare to directly kill. Cultivating seed-level core disciples was not an easy task, and it could even be said that these people had been especially trained by Luo clan to be used in the future when they managed to break into the truth realm. They were one of the valuable assets of Luo clan, and now that they had been beheaded, the rage of Luo clan could be imagined. Now, there was no turning back for the two sides. Only death was the ultimate solution. You dare! Luo Fangyi looked unbelievably at Yi Shiwen. Luo clan's overbearing influence was well known to everyone, and most people did not dare to go against Luo clan. Even one mention of the name of Luo was enough to make them scared. She was shocked not because of Yi Zaiwen's ruthlessness, because compared to him, she had been much more cruel. She had committed a lot of cruel acts, and that was the reason why she was able to reach her current level, which was a proof of her ruthlessness, but it was all what she had done to others. No one ever did this to her until now. Who do you think you are? Since you dared to intercept me, be prepared to die. Yi Shiwen said in an extremely angry voice, which was quite scary to hear. They not just threatened him but his family as well, so now he was fully convinced that he would absolutely not allow the people of Luo clan to hurt his family at any cost. This was definitely not a joke. Luo Fangyi could clearly feel the murderous aura coming out of Yi Zaiwen's body, and it was no secret that he was really intending to kill her. From the earlier fight, Luo Fangyi knew that she was definitely not the opponent of Yi Shiwen, which extremely frightened her in her heart. How could Yi Shiwen be so formidable? His strength was simply unimaginable and was clearly above her own strength. After arriving here, she did not try to kill Yi Shiwen just because of her brother's request to trap Yi Shiwen in this place and stop him from escaping, so that when her brother would come, he would personally kill Yi Shiwen, so none of them had planned to kill Yi Shiwen from the outset. At this moment, she suddenly shivered because she realized that if she had tried to kill him earlier, then she would have been the first one to die. Thinking of this, suddenly, a chill ran down her spine and she instantly turned around to escape from Yi Shiwen. You want to escape? Humph. She turned around to escape, but a surge of Zhen Yuan hit her from behind and exploded, making her to instantly fall on the ground, followed by a figure dropping from the sky towards her. Yi Shiwen directly stepped on her body, and the terrifying strength applied an intense pressure on her chest, and she immediately spouted a mouthful of blood. Today, none of you are going to escape, Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. Yi Shiwen originally did not want to slaughter them, that's why he just abolished the martial arts of Hu Yanghang and did not kill him, but later, these three thoroughly enraged him by bringing his family into this matter, and now, no matter what, he decided to exterminate all three of them, because even one of them managed to escape, then trouble would follow, but as long as no evidence was found by the Luo clan, then they could only plan secret attacks on him like today and would not be able to publicly prosecute him without the solid evidence. He needed to be careful because if the evidence was found by the Luo clan, then they had many ways to deal with him. In fact, they could even use their influence in the sect to deal with him, and by that time, if he did not possess enough strength to take on Luo clan, then that would really be a dead end for him. Yi Ziwen's Zhen Yuan was like the firmest shackles and had firmly locked down Luo Fangyi on the ground. She could not even move. Junior sister apprentice Hua, Junior sister apprentice Hua, save me. At this time, Luo Fangyi looked at Hua Menghan, as if she was looking at the peerless savior, and tried to seize the last ray of hope to save her life. Seeing that Hua Menghan turned away, suddenly, a feeling of despair arose in her heart, and she quickly shouted, Junior sister apprentice Hua, we are disciples of the same master. If you do no help me and master got to know about this, then he would certainly remove you from status of closing disciple. I did not see anything. A look of disgust flashed in the eyes of Hua Menghan, and seeing the current state of Luo Fangyi under the feet of Yi Shiwen, she actually felt some pleasant sensations in her heart. From the day she had entered the main sect, Luo Fangyi had been constantly causing troubles for her because Luo Fangyi thought that after the arrival of Hua Menghan, the head would not receive her as closing disciple, so Luo Fangyi was always looking for trouble, and some time ago, she sent her brother to poison Hua Menghan. If she had not met Yi Shiwen back then, death would have been small, because before dying she would have faced severe atrocities and insult. Considering this, the anger in the heart of Hua Menghan was not smaller than that of Yi Shiwen. Hearing the words of Hua Menghan, Luo Fangyi was demented and immediately shouted, You damn bitch, you see somebody in trouble and still refuse to help, I will. Before she could finish the sentence, Yi Shiwen directly killed her, and at this time, not a shred of mercy was present in his heart. After all, if not handled in a cleanly manner, then perhaps it could invite greater trouble in the future. We must hurry and report to the sect. Senior sister apprentice Luo and her team fought vigorously with the devils but lost the battle after they exhausted their strengths and were ultimately killed by the devils. The devils also ate their corpses on the spot. At this time, Jing Yannan suddenly said. Yi Shiwen suddenly realized that Jing Yannan words implied that they were going to stand on the same front as Yi Shiwen and won't expose him. After all, they personally witnessed his rage and decisive killing and were also afraid that Yi Shiwen would suddenly launch an attack on them. Moreover, they had a deeper friendship with Hua Menghan. In addition to Hu Yanghang, they also found the members of Luo clan very arrogant and annoying because they had tried to assassinate Hua Menghan, so they were secretly satisfied from the deaths of Luo Fangyi and her team. Judging from all this, it was obvious that they would certainly not risk their lives for the sake of the deaths of their enemies. Indeed, such a pity. Those devils are too cruel and flagitious. Everyone suddenly showed their acknowledgement and supported the statement made by Jing Yannan, showing that they were also on Yi Ziwen's side. Hua Menghan also nodded to show her consent, waved her palm, and a flame like genuine flew towards the 4 corpses and began to burn them, and in a while, the corpses completely burnt up without a trace left. Fellow senior brothers and sisters, I will not forget about the help I received today and certainly return the favor someday. If there is anything you need in the future, do not shirk to tell me about it. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.